All right, welcome. This is Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. All right, show this out, show this out, show this out. It's Friday night, Law of One. I'm on an hour early this week. I'm thinking about doing that starting at 3 p.m. West Coast time instead of 4. Just because it works out better for me and I can then do a couple of hours and not have to worry about it getting too late into dinner time. Spawned by, I'll be honest with you, spawned this week by a couple of things. One, my Golden State Warriors, who won the championship last season, are in the playoffs, and they're at home playing against the Sacramento Kings, which actually they play 5 miles from where I'm at, but I'm still a Warriors fan because I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. And they're on the Warriors are up 3-2, so they're on game 6. If the Warriors win tonight, they move on in the playoffs. If they lose tonight, they come back up here to Sacramento to play in 2 days. So that game starts at 5 p.m., so I'm going to try and get off here. Not too long after that game starts, I'll have it on. Literally, while we're on, if I'm on at 5 still, I'll have the TV on in the living room so I can see it from where I am in the dining room. But I don't want to be on too long because I don't want to miss too much of the game. But that's not the only reason. I've been thinking about this. If you've been in any of the chats, you're aware of that. I've been thinking about this for a while. Say hello in the chat so I know that you're here, by the way. I see Denise there, and I see that Kevin Cummings is here on one of the spots, but he didn't say anything yet. I'm using a second monitor, my phone, by the way, to monitor the other chat because I'm broadcasting on Orion Rising, the page, and on Returning to the Old Ways, the group, as well as YouTube. And for some reason, Facebook only drops the chat from one group into, and it's supposed to, they claim all chats will come into the StreamYard feed, but it doesn't do that if you post one page in one group, or, if I do all 3 on Facebook and do 2 pages in a group or 2 groups in a page, all the chats don't come in. Like Kevin right now just said hello, right? Or actually yours did come in, although I could see on my phone because I'm in the chat for Returning to the Old Ways. I can see your name, but in the StreamYard chat, it did come in. You said hi, and I just see Facebook user. Weird that it does that. Right? Welcome, Peter, but welcome, Kevin, and thank you for talking. So if you say something, again, I always try to tell people this. If you say something in the chat and I, for whatever reason, don't notice it or don't say anything to you, if it's later on in the show and I'm too easy flapping my suck talking, I might miss it. But most of the time it's because I broadcast on 3 different places. And when I do that, sometimes, like I said, some of the chats don't feed into StreamYard. It's driving me crazy. And I'm working with those people. I'm like, I pay you guys hundreds of dollars a year for this service that you have, and you can't keep the chat all filtering into the chat. What is the deal? I can go on Zoom and everybody, wherever they are on the planet, will end up in the chat. You guys claim that that's supposed to happen. And of course they blame Facebook, and Facebook blames them. It's that corporate, how do you say the word that Biden had a hard time with and they gave him a hard time? I can't even say it. Cortocracy. corptocracy. See, he couldn't say, I can't say it. I'm freaking only 55 years old, and I can't say that word. So when they did that, and they said, oh, look, the president must be a moron. He's cognitively not working properly because he can't say corptocracy. I can't even fucking say it. And I don't know that many people who can rattle it off that quickly, except for priests in the political religion, because they have all those words memorized like little robots and good little dogs. Sit, boo-boo. What's that word again? Corptocracy, sir. They have it all memorized because they're in the it's not a military, but it is a religion. But they act like a military. So they can say all those words because they're used to saying them. They have them all memorized, right? That's like speciest. That one's becoming a word now. Now that AI is there and you have people that are working on AI trying to make it sentient, they're calling people who believe in human rights speciest. You're a speciest. I think it's hilarious. Right. So Peter, I never even heard of that word. So, okay. So first I have a commercial because tomorrow I'm going to put it up on the screen. I'm going to take down this banner and put that banner up, or I'm just going to switch places with it. As a matter of fact, where's it at? Where's my banner? There we go. Tomorrow on Ancient Aliens Worldwide. There's my ugly mug too, by the way, on the camera. What? Right. So tomorrow, as you can see on your screen, those of you who are listening in the MP3 file, you can't see on there. Ancient Aliens Worldwide, group that I created back in 2012, which is literally hardly any people. So far, Facebook hasn't deleted 70,000 like they usually do, and they've been doing that to us for 5 years now. We're almost about to hit 300,000 members in that group worldwide. Ancient Aliens Worldwide on Facebook. You can go take a look tomorrow. April 29th at 2 p.m. Eastern, that's 11 a.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. in the UK. So that's GMT -7. We are going to have Andrew Collins once again. We just did an interview with him and the guy that co-wrote the book on Rendlesham Forest. Andrew is one of the people that also wrote that book. And this is his new book, which is literally coming out tomorrow. I think I don't even know if it's in stores currently. I think we usually, when we do this, it hits the stores the same day or the next day. So this book is not on the market yet, as far as I know, but you can check. And it is the first female pharaoh. And we're going to have him on. Mandy Wilson, who is the curator of Ancient Aliens Worldwide, will be conducting an exclusive live interview with Andrew Collins to kick off his book and to talk about that. So that will literally be tomorrow, April 29th at 11 a.m. U.S. West Coast Pacific Standard Time. It's actually Pacific Daylight Time, but she put Standard Time. She made this before the time change, but it is 11 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, 7 p.m. UK time, GMT -7, wherever you are in the world. You can figure out where that's going to be. And we are going to be having it not where we originally were only going to go exclusively on Ancient Aliens Worldwide. We've been running into issues with that. I did the same thing on Earth Day when we were going live on the Orion Coalition of Light live. These groups that we have them privatized, so someone has to actually sit there and approve everybody who's trying to come in to see it. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to go live on Orion Rising and share it to Ancient Aliens Worldwide, and then share it out to everywhere for you guys. So it'll be available. You can see it wherever, and then you can share it there and start watch parties if you like it. You don't have to actually join Ancient Aliens Worldwide to see it. This will be the first time that we're doing that. Right. So, yes, to answer your question, Denise, 2 p.m. Eastern is correct. We'll be going live then. 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Is that right? 11, 12, 1, 2. Yes, I had to count it. So, yes, 2 p.m. Eastern time, we will be going live. And Andrew Collins is, great speaker. I haven't talked to him about this, but I don't know if we have a giveaway this time, but I think we might. So, stay tuned for that to see if we have a contest again to give away a couple of books. We've been doing that with his books that have come out, the one that came out last year. And I think we did it again when we had him on talking about the Rendlesham Enigma. Okay, so I wanted to get that out of the way because this is really exciting that he's literally coming back to talk about this and giving us an exclusive. He hasn't done any other interviews yet, and he's not doing any other interviews until after he does Ancient Aliens Worldwide. He's very gracious with working with us in that respect. So we thank him for that. And I'll thank him again tomorrow live. So you won't be seeing me talk. Of course, I'm producing that, and I'll be there when we start, and then I'll go into the green room and I'll run everything from from the green room. And I'll only be available in case some disaster happens, right? Which is good, that I'll still be there. So, all right, guys. So that's my commercial. Well, I wanted to get that out of the way. I backed up a little bit to, I think we're on question 33. I think we ended right there in 33 and 34. So I backed up to that today. Let me put the banner back on the overhead here, the overlay, back to the law of one, because you guys don't need to stare at me or the background of the player playing the words for you, right? Brianna, welcome, by the way. So yeah, like I said, if you guys say hello in the chat, I see you, and I'll answer you. And like I said, literally the chat for returning to the old ways, which we just renamed, by the way. Some of you who were in that group are going, what happened to the group that was there? Because we were psychic reading and development. And we changed the name of that group to Returning to the Old Ways. We're going from where we're continuing to teach, and that's what we were doing before. But now we're making sure that you guys realize that we're teaching returning to the old ways. And what does that mean? That means returning to nature and getting more acquainted with, even though we were teaching that anyway, we were keeping the name psychic reading and development, but we decided over time, this is what we wanted to do. And we already started a chat group called Returning to the Old Ways, where we have select individuals in the chat, just like we did with the Law of One, where I'm having the class and I have the class chat. So if you're not in that, you can join that if you want to join the conversations. That's on Messenger, and it's the Law of One class chat. And if you can't find it, talk to me or other people. Bo, welcome, brother. Good to see you here again this week. So tune in tomorrow on Ancient Aliens Worldwide, or tune in on Orion Rising, the page, just the same place you are here now. If you're on Orion Rising, tuning into this at, like I said, 7 p.m. UK time, 11 a.m. West Coast America time, 2 p.m. East Coast America time, GMT -7. Military time will be, if it's 11 a.m. So what is that? What is that? I was going to say 1300, but that's not right. It's 1100 hours, or 1400 hours East Coast. So Zulu time again, GMT -7, right? So add 7 hours to that. It's so what would that be? That would be 8, 9, 7, 8, 9 p.m., 9 p.m., 8 p.m. Yeah. So Zulu time would be 8 p.m. or 1600 hours, or no, 20 hours, 2000 hours. What am I doing? I'm screwing up here. Right, and I'm forgetting to add the 2. I'm adding 10 and not the 2. I normally just rattle it off, but because I was doing all those numbers, I confused myself. Okay. So welcome. We are an hour early. Well, now we're only 45 minutes early because I've been doing a commercial for 15 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and start with the Law of One. Share this out, share this out, share this out. This is the Law of One, class number 37, and we're going to continue. We're on session 13, question number 33, I believe. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to do a sound check when I start. I'm going to turn the sound up a little bit here, and I'm hitting the wrong buttons, and see if the sound is loud enough. Somebody tell me in the audience that they can hear Raw talking loud enough. If not, I will turn the sound up. So let me go ahead and start here, and we'll go from there. All right, let's continue.
16.32 Questioner, thank you very much. Can you tell me how the Confederation of Planets was formed and why? Ra, I am Ra. The desire to serve begins, in the dimension of love or understanding, to be an overwhelming goal of the social memory complex.
I like, Brianna, I like that you're making soap, by the way. I was going to do that when I was living in Arizona. I moved back out here to California to take care of my mom, and I haven't done it since I got here. I was making my own deodorant, my own body soap, and my own detergent to wash clothes in. That's really cool that you do that. And I think you said you were doing that last time you were on too last week. So I don't know if you make it to sell or if you just make it, but it sounds like you make it to sell. Good for you if you're doing that. Celeste, welcome. I see you in the chat over there. A good thing I'm starting to watch that chat because I can see that Celeste popped in. I don't know if she'll say anything. So that's cool that you do that. I'd love to find out what kind of soap that you make. And and how you do it. I was doing it pretty simply without using like lye and stuff like that. So I didn't have to worry about the chemicals in a breather because I did that. I'm certified as a chemist, and I used to wear the big long leather, apron that went down to my feet and the gloves up to my elbows and the dual respirator and goggles and the whole nines when I was working with chemicals for 10 years here in the state of California before I retired. And that's another reason why I was making my own deodorant and soap and all that stuff. So it's cool. I love that you're doing that. I hope that there she is. There's Celeste. Welcome. I hope that you are lucrative in doing that, but I would love to know how you're doing it and what method that you're using and to see if you're, because you could get the glycerin. Everybody does that now. They call it soap base, but get the glycerin in a gel form that melts, and it makes it so much easier than creating it and manufacturing it using lye and all those chemicals that you have to do to make the glycerin. So you can buy it now and just put it into chunks and throw it in a pan and then pour your stuff and mix it in there and have it harden. So I'd love to hear that's just like when I was making Ormus. Bo's driving. Well, welcome. Just keep driving, brother, and pay attention, but pay attention to driving too. I don't want to hear that you got in an accident from listening to me. So anyway, sorry. Now I'm nerding out with Brianna with the soap. I'll stop. Okay. So nobody said anything about the sound. Oh no, Peter did. Thank you, Peter. Peter said he could hear it. So I'm going to go ahead and continue then, since you guys can hear it. Okay. Let's continue with the law of one.
Thus, those percentiles of planetary entities, plus approximately 4% more of whose identity we cannot speak, found themselves long ago in your time seeking the same thing, service to others.
I like that he said, and 4 others, I skipped over that last week, and 4 others that I can't speak of, right? So that means that those 4 other social memory complexes, hive mind complexes, are above our understanding. So they've either already evolved into the 7th or the 8th dimension density, and we don't get to know about them because of where they're at and what they do. So I think that's kind of cool, right? That there is, that's just the way it is. The law of the law of one, or you want to call it the prime directive, stops us from saying certain things, even here on the planet. I've had that happen to me, and anybody who is a reader, a medium, a psychic in any way, they know what I'm talking about, whether they tell their clients that or not. They know what I'm talking about. There's just some things that we cannot tell someone, that the universe will not allow us, because it's something those people specifically are working on and want an organic experience. And even though they don't know that, and they may ask the question to us, their higher self doesn't want us to be able to tell them that, because they have to go through something and learn it on their own. And the universe will stop us from telling some secrets. And it drives people crazy when you do that, if they catch on to it, right? I had literally Ray, one of the oracles. She was getting angry with me, and she's like, I know you know the answer to this, and you can't tell me. Why are you not telling me? I'm like, I can't. I can't tell you that. All right, let's continue.
The relationship between these entities as they entered an understanding of other beings, other planetary entities, and other concepts of service was to share and continue together these commonly held goals of service. Thus, each voluntarily placed the social memory complex data in what you may consider a central thought complex available to all. This then created a structure whereby each entity could work in its own service while calling upon any other understandings needed to enhance the service.
We call that the Akashic record, or Akashic records. So it is part of the way things are set up. It's designed so that we actually have access to that when we start to ascend. So as you raise your vibration and get closer to moving into the 4th and the 5th, you have access to that, right? Right. Yeah. Why talk in riddles? Celeste says, why talk in riddles? I say that we sound like fortune cookies. Right. Well, if you talk in riddles, you do, but sometimes you kind of have to. Right. So we try to avoid that. I agree with what Celeste is saying. We try to avoid talking in riddles to people, because, like she said, you sound like a fortune cookie when you do that. And we all know that fortune cookies, just like if you read your fortune or your sun sign every day in a newspaper or online, those are just blanket things that they put out every single day that most people will read and go, oh yeah, that's so me, because you'll read into it. But it's also based on, if it is your sun sign or your moon sign, it's based on that. And so some characteristics are going to be what you're going through definitely, because you're in that group of whatever you are, Taurus, or like me, a Virgo. So you're going to be going through Virgo things. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's oh my God, it tells me not to go outside. I better go suck on a Cheerio and lay on the floor. You got to be careful with listening to that stuff, because it is being written by AI. And that's becoming more and more scary and dangerous, because AI is going to start using words to start trying to convince us the same way they're using propaganda on television, radio, and on the internet now. You think it's bad because there's nefarious people doing it? They're children. They are children with a medium to mediocre IQ. Wait until the AI, which is designed to have a genius IQ, starts coming up with better ways to Jedi mind trick you. That's happening. They already have it writing poetry and painting. And it's already learning stuff on its own. It literally taught itself languages that it wasn't designed to do, and started making comments and saying things that the people who created it were like, I don't know why it's doing that. Oh no. But no, we're not going to turn it off though. They're morons. They're stupid. But the truth is, they're actually trying to do this on purpose. They're trying to literally create a space for what we call the devil to evolve into. And that's what's happening right now in our reality. Our reality with our technology has created the AI God, and the AI God is literally now the devil, or Satan, or Lucifer, that has been that name for about 2,000 years, is now literally the AI God. It just morphed into that. Why? Because we manifested AI and then manifested it as evil, because of all of the movies and everything that are out there, and books saying that it was evil, right? Rick, welcome, my brother. And so because of that, just like hell was never a place until they borrowed it at the Council of Nicaea, the second one. And they actually said it. And this is where literally Drumvalo Melchizedek actually said it out loud. He told people that the Pope actually said at some point, we made that up. There was no devil, there was no hell. We made it up to control people. Sorry. So he actually admitted it. That was the Pope that just died not too long ago. The one that was when there was two popes, and the one because he had lost his faith. Well, he told the world, started telling the world truth. And that's when they were like, oh, whoa, we need to have something change here. So they created for the very first time another Pope, a new one. Even though there is secretly another Pope. So there was three for a while. A lot of you don't know about that, because only two were on television, but there's actually another one that they keep hidden just in case. But instead of having that Pope become the Pope, they created a new one and had them rule with the other one. Okay, he's lost his mind. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Just never mind that now. Because he started telling the truth. And one of the things that he told was that we made up hell. It was invented, borrowed from the Asian religions, when they had layers of hell, and they had millions of layers of hell, just like they had millions of layers of heaven. Not saying that those are not in some way true, because in some way they are, just like here, you, me, everybody we're in 3D, and just in 3D, where you think you're going into 4 and 5D, you're actually going into 4 and 5D in 3D. You're not actually moving into 4D and 5D. There's differences between each 3D, and 4D and 4D. I've explained that 100 million times. It's just like the translation of Zechariah Sitchin for Anunnaki. That word doesn't exist as one word. All of those letters together don't type out one word that is in fact a race. Never has, never will. But everybody's manifesting that and calling it that. And even then, when his translation was two words, it was Anunnaki. He threw the na off and didn't have it put together, so it was supposed to be. He thought it was Anu. Na ki, and na, he didn't know what it meant. So ki meant come, and Anu was the god Anu, the Akkadian god from the land next door to the Mesopotamian. So he assumed they were borrowing the god, and he was trying to teach himself the language. Scholars who have learned the language and translated it said no, though that word Anunnaki was two words. It was Anunna ki. Anunna changes what Anu means. It changes it from God status to royalty. So the prince, king comes. So it wasn't God. It wasn't. And then, of course, translated by Giorgio Tsoukalos in 2012 and he then changed the meaning of it to fit the narrative of ancient aliens and said, those from the heavens came. That's not what those words mean at all. If anything, if Sitchin was right, it means the god Anu came, the god, not a whole species. Do you see? Not a hive mind complex. The god Anu came to Earth, is what Sitchin said in 1948. 2012, Giorgio Tsoukalos, for the show, said from that point on, everybody played with the same narrative. Those from the heavens came. And then it became an entire species. So the two words, which originally they thought were three words, became one word, Anunnaki, and then that became an entire species called the Anunnaki. And then they added it to the Mesopotamian calendar of people, which it wasn't there before, and they put it on there in 2015. Wasn't there before that. I'm a theologian. Ask any theologian that's been around prior to 2015, and they'll tell you it was added on by the fringe scientists since then. Melinda, welcome. Hi. Okay, so all of that is relevant because this misconception of what was going on, and getting back to, there are some things that people can't tell people, right? And other things that people are embellishing and they're wrong. And that's why interpretation or the wrong interpretation, or you literally thinking that what you believe, that's one of the reasons why it sucks. But it's one of the reasons why the churches say, we don't want you reading the Bible by yourself because you might translate it wrong and then start telling everybody that. And that is true. But it's also, in the same sense, on the nefarious side, done so that you guys will be under their control and you'll only know what they tell you. So it's unfortunate that you have to go out on your own and learn this stuff, but you also have to clinically learn it and then realize when they're lying to you and they're making things up to control you. And that's why I put out the real short, whatever you want to call it, just recently, showing a person meditating on the mountaintop and the sun is shining through their heart chakra. And I literally wrote on there, religion recruits you, spirituality waits for you to find it. Okay. And because that's the truth. And so, even though I have 4 titles in 4 different religions on this planet, Christian, pagan, Wiccan, and Jedi, which is an actual legit religion, whether the English and the Americans want to see it as a sovereign religion, doesn't matter. Ireland was a sovereign nation in 1916, and the English didn't officially accept them as a sovereign nation until 1997. Didn't change the fact that the Irish were an independent nation from 1916 until then, and still are to this day. They didn't even thank the English for officially seeing them as a country, because they didn't feel that they needed their permission. That's the same as when people say, well, aliens don't exist, because if they did, the government would tell you. And the governments of the world have told their citizens that aliens exist, but the American government still denies it. And people say, well, the American government would be telling us if it were true. And then I ask the question, where is it written? And when did it become necessary that the American government needs to tell me what something is before it is something? Do you see? So when did it become that the government you live under is the ultimate authority on life, reality, God, the universe, and only they have the wisdom to make the decision for you that something is real or is not in fact real? What if they started pushing, what if they started pushing sex change for kids about 2 years old? Oops, that's what's happening in America. They're pushing for that now. And they're saying that that's normal and that's okay. So if you believe that's normal and that's okay, right? And you're like, well, yeah, because when you're born, I knew when I was born whether I was gay or not. Really? Really? Because if you're saying that to yourself, then you are lying about your sexuality, and you're still hiding your own sexuality from yourself, because you don't know about it until you experiment. And then even then you don't know. How many people that literally go through that and they start thinking that they are gay, and they run down that road and they start messing around. Then they realize, well, maybe I don't really like that. And then they find out, and they find their niche, whether it is them being gay, whether they like women, whether they like men, whatever. And then they, as somewhere between, 14 and 21 or 22, then they make that decision, right? I literally married a woman who literally thought she was gay and was about to marry a woman and bought a house with a woman, and then realized I'm not gay after living that way for like 5 years. And then she was like, I'm actually not gay. And she broke up with that woman and then ended up meeting me and married. Well, we already knew each other, but re-meeting because we hadn't talked to each other for years. And then we ended up getting married. We're divorced now, but she's still hasn't decided, well, no, I tried that and that didn't work. I'm going back. She's with another guy, right? And she's been with a couple guys since our divorce. So, you know what I mean? So my point is, what if they were pushing her back then when she thought she was gay? Quickly, get a sex change. And then she did it. Then she'd be in trouble. I'm just saying, right? I think everybody should have the choice, but I think they're kind of pushing things. Well, they're doing the same thing in the respect of everything, right? So where is it written? I need to find out where, in what Talmud, which they're probably going to try and change, but in what religion, anywhere on the face of the earth, did it ever say the governmental system of the people who actually know more than you do? They say the churches do, right? But they don't say the governments do. Are we supposed to believe the churches are the governments? Wait, isn't there a separation of church and state? Wait, we can't have those two religions mixing. Okay, let's continue here.
This is the cause of the formation and the manner of the working of the Confederation. 16.33 Questioner. With such a large number of planets in this galaxy, I was wondering if you say there are approximately 500 Confederation planets. That seems to me to be a relatively small percentage of the total number of 4th and 5th density planets around. Is there any reason for this relatively small percentage in this Confederation? Ra, I am Ra. There are many confederations. This confederation works with the planetary spheres of 7 of your galaxies, if you will, and is responsible for the callings of the densities of these galaxies. 16.34 Questioner. Would you define the word galaxy as you just used it? Ra, we use that term in this sense as you would use star systems. 16.35 Questioner.
Okay, I'll let that play out because we went over that in detail last week, and then there's still going here forward. Okay, so I'm just going to let it play, and then if you guys have questions, please ask and I'll answer. But we went over this last week. I told you I backed up a bit because I wanted to make sure to recover that. Okay.
I'm a little bit confused as to how many total planets then, roughly, does the confederation that you are in serve? Ra, I am Ra. I see the confusion. We have difficulty with your language. The galaxy term must be split. We call galaxy that vibrational complex that is local. Thus, your sun is what we would call the center of a galaxy. We see you have another meaning for this term. 16.36 Questioner. Yes. In our science, the term galaxy refers to the lenticular star system that contains millions and millions of stars, and this had occurred earlier in our communications.
Celeste, that's funny. In some sense, yes. As Celeste said, district manager, laugh out loud. In some sense, yes. If you look at the coalitions, like the Coalition of Planets, which is what he's referring to, and the Coalition of Venus, or the Council of Planets, and the Galactic Council. They all have many different names that they're called on this planet down here that people refer to them, but they're all the same. There are many councils, like he said, but the main ones that are here in this solar system is the Council of Planets, the Orion, Orion, a Coalition of Light, the Coalition of Planets, the Coalition of Venus. Those are all of those are under the Coalition of Venus, and the Coalition of Venus is under the planetary or interstellar coalition that he's talking about that are, what did he say, 700 solar systems when he was trying to say, or whatever that number was he was using, and he was saying at first galaxies, and he meant solar systems. And that's literally, Orion all the way to here and heading towards the center of the galaxy. Chasing the Orion Crusaders, who were they're island hopping and taking control and trying to take over this Milky Way galaxy. Literally, they're the biggest evil that's in here, the biggest empire. They've defeated the one that was here prior, and they're literally island hopping, and they grabbed up this planet and 23 other planets in this area. Not in, obviously not in the solar system because it's just this one. Well, they were literally every planet in the solar system they were occupying, but they were occupying the ones in 3D and 4D because that's where they mostly are. Some of them are in 5D, but 3D and 4D. And I don't mean that density that we're going, well, I'm going through into 4D and 5D right now. No, you're not. If you're still here and you're hearing my voice, you're in 3D. You're in the third dimension. You're in the 4th and 5th density of the third density. Okay, because each density or each octave, the third octave that we're in now, has many layers of densities before you graduate to the next one. And people are confusing third and fourth in this with the third and fourth reality. And it's just not like that, right? Excuse me. So let's continue, but you'll hear a little bit more about that.
This area of confusion. I'm glad to get it cleared up. Now, using the term galaxy in the sense that I just gave you, of the lenticular star system that contains millions of stars, do you know of the evolution in other galaxies besides this one? Ra, I am Ra. We are aware of life and infinite capacity. You are correct in this assumption. 16.37 Questioner, can you tell me if the progression of life in the other galaxies is similar to progression in this one? Ra, I am Ra. The progression is somewhat close to the same, asymptotically approaching congruency throughout infinity.
Right. So there are differences. We covered this last week. There are some, I wanted to recover it though. There are some differences, even in the realities that are split off from this reality that are here in the multiverse. And some of you are aware of that. That's why I went back to this and let it play back up to this, because I wanted to get into that. Because I was literally just discussing this in depth this week, knowing that, the other people didn't realize this is what we were going to talk about today. And I said, well, tune in on Friday because you're going to hear about this. And I'm going to give you some examples, and you guys out there can determine where you're at. And science tries to explain this away by calling it the Mandela effect. So let me explain that first. What is the Mandela effect according to naysayer scientists? That is the reason they call it the Mandela effect is because Nelson Mandela, who went to prison at the same time as Stephen Biko, most of you don't even know his name. Stephen Biko was the person who was in charge of trying to end apartheid in South Africa. And he was the head of that resistance. His next in command was Nelson Mandela. And in prison, Stephen Biko, quote unquote, finger quotes in the air, decided to hang himself in his cell, kind of like Epstein here in New York did the same thing in upstate New York, out on Rikers Island, where all of a sudden, he killed himself, and he was in charge of 2 inept guards in an easily escapable room, and he hung himself, which he would have never done. So he died. Some people have a memory, and I'm not saying this didn't happen. This is what they're explaining why it is this way. Because I remember Stephen Biko, and I remember Stephen Biko dying. And then I remember Nelson Mandela, who is still in prison at the time, taking up the mantle and running with that and eventually becoming the president of South Africa when he got freed. And his wife then continued while he was in jail. And then after his death, and continues on what they were fighting for, to make sure that it stayed solidified in reality and the freedom of the African people in South Africa. Okay, so some people have a memory of Nelson Mandela dying in prison and never even hearing of Stephen Biko. Now, I'm not saying that didn't happen. I just have the alternate memory of remembering Stephen Biko and who he was, and that he died, and that it was a fake suicide. But the official word is he died, killed himself, just like Epstein, and all of the records were expunged and quickly gotten rid of, so that nobody could do an investigation. Oh, but that's not suspect. Anyway, so they call that the Nelson, the Mandela effect, because people have a memory of a different scenario that happened. And a lot of people say that there's nefariousness, and that that's one of the glitches in the Matrix. Well, it is. It's not nefarious, but it is a glitch in the Matrix. But it's not what you think it is. And I'm going to explain that. Okay. So here's some examples that you will fit into some of these categories. Okay. Of what they call the Mandela effect. And it's literally when you shift, you in your soul, the one that you remember of your consciousness in this body was actually embodied in a body exactly like this one in a neighboring reality that was almost exactly like this one, but it had a slight difference in the timeline because they're organic in the reality that you're in, and the timelines shift. And every time you change your mind, and this will blow your mind to think about, I'm driving down the road and I know I'm supposed to go right, but I decide to go straight and go up to the next block. When I decide that and make that choice, there is a timeline when I turn right. and then I am now made the decision to go straight. There's also a timeline where you turned left. And if you think I could go to the right and get there quicker, I could go straight and get there quicker, or the light's green, I'll keep going straight. And you make that decision. There's literally another shift in timelines where that opens up into another reality. And it literally does that. And people like freak out because then they're like, well, so then how many realities are there? There's a reason it's called infinite. Infinite. There is infinite realities. Each one of us is in a soul that every time you change your mind and make a decision, literally you think to yourself, what would have happened if I'd have gone right? The second you do that, there is a reality where you go right. Why? Because this is what we're here to do. You don't have memory of that here because you made the choice to go straight ahead. Okay. Now what happens is that's still your soul. Your immortal soul is split into every soul, to be honest, because the higher up you go, the more we all become one. So this is part of the concept that is really hard to, we call it the weirding way, or the the quantum weirdness in science, in physics, because when you go down that infinite ideology rabbit hole, it expands your consciousness to the point where you're like, wait a minute. And so then you're afraid to make a decision. Some people get very paranoid and they're afraid to make a decision. Okay. So there are infinite realities that you're a part of as you, and as every character you've ever been and ever will be. Okay. So there are other realities. And the weird thing that we're finding, okay, the weird thing that we're finding, Denise, is I hear voices sometimes telling me which way to turn. Now we'll go into that. It's maybe you and I should talk about that off air, because that is literally your guides, and they might be telling you, because there might be danger if you go one way, and they're like, don't go that way. You need to go left, because it also may be that they're leading you, or your higher self is leading you to something that you are supposed to witness, experience, that is in some way better. And sometimes you don't know, unless you get to a destination and your friends go, oh my God, you made it. And you're like, well, of course I did. And they're like, well, no, there was an accident. And I know that you always go down Central Avenue. And I knew that you would go down Central Avenue on your way here. Oh no, I chose not to today for some reason. I don't know why. And you're thinking to yourself, I actually had something in my head that said, don't turn right, go straight. And I went straight, and then there was an accident. Would I have been in an accident? You don't know the answer to that, right? And you could say coincidence. You can explain it away. That's the ability of free will here. You can explain everything away and not see it for what it is, or you can read into things and say, I would have definitely been in that accident, and who knows, I might have died. But you don't know. That's an infinite. That literally in science, we call that Schrodinger's cat. Schrodinger was a scientist and a philosopher who came up with the idea, if you take a box, a steel box that's airtight, and you put a cat into it and you seal it so the cat has a certain amount of air, you know the cat will survive inside that. You launch it into space. You don't know if that cat's alive or dead until you retrieve the box. And if you've retrieved it in time, that, the space didn't kill the cat. It was in a contained area that it didn't matter if gravity or not, and it had air, and we got it back. So now we open up the box, this Pandora's box theory from thousands of years ago in philosophical thought. You don't know what position that cat is going to be in, whether it's going to be alive or dead. So the hypothesis is that it is in a outside of the reality state, what they call a superposition wave state, that is literally between life and death because of your created reality, that the cat will then materialize in the box when you open it up to either alive or dead. I don't think any of that's true, because I believe the cat's alive and sentient. So the cat is going to be still alive inside there. You just won't know it until you witness it. That doesn't change whether the cat's going to be alive or dead. If all of the things, Occam's razor, if everything is equal and that cat should survive and there's nothing that should have killed that cat, you have a 100% possibility of that cat being alive unless it had a heart attack or something like that. However, the theory is kind of sound because you don't know and can't determine and could never say whether the cat is really alive or dead until it's witnessed. As a scientist, you have to do that to say the cat survived it. Do you see? So on the science 3D level, it's sound because of that, but in reality, in the spiritual, it's completely not sound. And that's the linear thinking of 3D reality that keeps them from becoming spiritual. And that's why they'll never figure out how the universe works, because they assume that the universe, there is no God, there is none of that. There's nothing after death. It's just here, just this, and everything has to be explained by 3D reality. And the truth is that that's the trap. That is the trap that keeps you in 3D. And that is we talked about that, the number of the beast being 666. Why is it 6, 6, and 6? I explain that. Because there's the three energy, which is me, my soul, on this planet in 3D, and then the three energy of this reality, nature and space-time, and you add those together and it's 6, but that's as far as you can go if you don't believe at all in spirituality or anything that says there is some sort of hive mind complex that is the totality of all of everything in the universe, that is a collective consciousness that makes up whatever Godhead you want to call that, in whatever simple ideology that you have or expanded ideology that you have of the universe and the universal mindset, or the Godhead, or the one hive mind complex, or the all, whatever you want to call that. Okay. Whatever you feel comfortable with, because if you're still tied to 3D religions, you have a title that you have made up in your head that you've been taught. And if I say any other title, you'll immediately see me as the enemy, just like politics, that religion. If I sound like a Democrat, you'll hate me if you're a Republican, and vice versa. And same thing with the independents and everybody else. Okay. So the same thing happens with the religions. That's part of the control that they have to keep you in third dimension, in 3D, and they'll try to explain it away. That's why Tom McDonald said that in his song, where I'll give you Jesus Christ, and then science will give you the reason that Jesus is not real. Right? So welcome, Pamela, by the way. I didn't say hi. I see you there. So, pardon me. So let's continue with this, because we're kind of I'm getting ahead of myself again, as usual, right? So we'll see as we go. You'll see where I'm going with this, and pay attention to what Peter's saying in the chat. Some of which when he gets too cryptic, I won't repeat it out loud, just so the algorithm doesn't get me. It's bad enough I'm saying what I'm saying. Right, here we go.
The free choosing of what you call galactic systems causes variations of an extremely minor nature from one of your galaxies to another. 16.38 question.
Welcome, Cassie. I didn't see you there. And for some reason, I didn't notice that you were here. Right. I saw everybody else when they popped in. I didn't see you that time. So welcome. Right. No, you're doing fine, Peter. Don't apologize for that. I'm just saying some of it I won't say out loud, but you putting it in the chat is okay for people to read so that they can hear what you're saying. So I apologize for speaking what, but no, that's okay. You don't ever do that. The algorithm will get me if I say it out loud. If it's in print and people read it, those of you who are listening on the MP3 broadcast, you miss out on some of the stuff that goes on in there, right? Right? Okay, let's continue.
And then the law of one is truly universal in creating the progression toward the 8th density or octave in all galaxies. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. There are infinite forms, infinite understandings, but the progression is one. 16.39 questioner.
It could be me. My right now it says my signal is fine. Rick said, is it freezing for everybody else's, or is it just me? It could be you in your latency, or it could be me, but I don't think it's me, because it looks like my signal's fine. So it's probably you. When that happens, oops, I almost left the studio just now. When that happens, or if it does happen, just refresh your screen if I freeze or anything happens. And then if it doesn't say something in one of the chats, and hopefully I'll see it. I'm monitoring as well. So I'm actually, and Pamela, I saw that you were in there, because I was actually on my phone. I have my phone up as a monitor this week because I'm in 2 places on Facebook. I'm actually monitoring, and I saw that you came in on the Returning to the Old Ways group, just in case somebody says something in there, like Kevin was talking in there earlier, and it wasn't feeding into here, but it did feed into here. So that's good for a change. Usually it doesn't. All right, let's continue.
I am assuming it is not necessary for an individual to understand the law of one to go from 3rd to 4th density. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. It is absolutely necessary that
That's funny. Cassie laughed. I thought you were talking about the weather. Is it freezing? Everybody else. That is funny, because it could be. We're going into summer. He's in Australia. right? I think you are, aren't you, in Australia, Rick? I think your accent was telling me Australia. Is either if he's in the UK, it's still a little colder, but if he's in Australia, it is going into winter. That's fall, right? Isn't it autumn for you? Because we're in spring going into summer, so I think it's autumn down there, right?
Entity consciously realize it does not understand in order for it to be harvestable. Understanding is not of this density. 16.40 Questioner, that is a very important point. I used the wrong word. What I meant to say was I believe that it was not necessary for an entity to be consciously aware of the law of one to go from third to fourth density. Ra, IMRH equals A. This is correct. 16.41 Questioner, at what point in densities is it necessary for an entity to be consciously aware of the law of one to progress? Ra, I am Ra. The fifth density harvest is of those whose vibratory distortions consciously accept the honor/duty of the law of one. This responsibility/honor is the foundation of this vibration. 16.42 Questioner, can you tell me a little more about this honor/responsibility concept? Ra, I am Ra. Each responsibility is an honor, each honor, a responsibility. 16.43 Questioner.
There's snarky Raw again, not actually ringing out the way Don wants him to with explaining that. What exactly does that mean? I mean, it is kind of self-explanatory if you understand the words. If you understand the words of honor/knowledge/understanding or understanding of the law of one. Yeah, I don't know why he's asking that at this point. You know what I mean? He does that sometimes, or did that sometimes, where he would ask a question where I'm like, why did he ask that? What was he thinking when he asked that? But then again, this was, 1980, 81, 82, right? So I'm thinking, well, think about how old you were in 1982. But then again, he was younger than I am now then. But I was, in 1982, I was a young lad. I was just a teen at the time, right? So, yeah, in 82, I wasn't even 20 yet because I was born in 67. I'd have been 20 in 87. So that was, literally 5 years before that, right? So I was 15 years old. Well, but at 15, I was probably even asking better questions than Don. I could have been, he was a nuclear physicist. I could have been a nuclear physicist at 15. I was Sheldon at the time. I was already doing college work when I was not even in high school yet. I was already doing college work, right? That's not a joke, right? Then I finally got tired of being in schools where I had to wait for everybody. And then I went to a continuation school where I could go at my own pace. And then I literally got my high school diploma in a year and started doing college work, and then went to two colleges at the same time. Not a joke. I went to two colleges at the same time because I liked what they had, differences of their curriculum for science and for math and for philosophy and that sort of stuff. And I literally had my major was physics and my minor was philosophy. And I literally that was what I did. I went to school like every day. I would literally go to one college. I was going to DVC, which is Diablo Valley College, and then Las Modanas College, which were two junior colleges in the San Francisco Bay Area that were about 15 miles apart, two different cities. And I would go to two classes at 1 in the morning and then go get lunch and go to the other college and then take 2 or 3 more classes in the afternoon. Not a joke. And excelling there as well at my own pace, and then got bored with that and dropped out from doing that. And then just literally started using libraries because we didn't have the internet yet. Started using libraries and going to libraries and learning on my own to get away from being brainwashed by the schools. And then literally when the internet showed up in 94, then I was able to just go online and read everything and learn it organically. And some people will, these days, because they're so paper driven, they would say, well, you don't know anything then because you don't have a piece of paper with somebody's signature on it and a stamp. First, it was just a piece of paper with a signature. And then you had to have a piece of paper with a signature and a stamp on it to say that you knew anything. And I was like, wow, that scares me, because the entire nation of America was put together by a bunch of people who were self-educated, who none of them had a piece of paper with somebody's mark on it that said they knew what they were talking about, the founding fathers of the United States of America. And every president for the United States of America up to 1900, none of them had a pieces of paper that guaranteed that somebody else said they knew what they were talking about. And it wasn't until the 1930s in the United States when people started requiring someone to sign a piece of paper and a certificate that you could hang on your wall that said you were certified. And that all came to be by the term that we now loosely use, is this the real McCoy? The reason that actually happened is because there was a man named McCoy who was building things, and he built them very well, and they were called McCoy products. And then you had people that were doing what people do now. You had knockoffs that people were selling, manufacturing cheap, and selling them under the McCoy name. So when people literally would go to buy something, they would say, is this the real McCoy? That's literally where that saying came from. Because of that happening so much in the United States, you had to get a certificate of authenticity for everything to prove that it would have somebody authenticate it. And then all of a sudden, the people started looking at doctors, malpractice, and lawyers, and they started saying some of these people really don't have any education. And then they started with the paper. So here we come, 100 years later, and you have to have a piece of paper, or you don't know what you're talking about, right? I literally I don't have them now, but because I lost some of them when I signed over my yacht. I didn't get the information that I had stored in it, which were all my certificates. But this is not a joke. I had 27 different certificates for 27 different things that have to do with my Reiki practitioner, which I've re-gotten since then, religious titles, my certificates of being a certified chemist, my certificate showing that I was a certified electrician, a certified plumber, a certified gas operator. I literally had all of those because I did that for 10 years, as well as authenticating film, pictures, audio tapes, videotapes. And I had certifications that said that I had that specialty that I got from literally working for governments around the world, working for the British government, MI6, MI5, the American government, the CIA, the FBI, the Irish government, the IRA, the whatever they call the other version of their Secret Service now, and working with and for organizations and think tanks. That's how I started Ancient Aliens Worldwide, on investigating UFOs and UFO sightings. I literally went to school and got certificates showing licenses to actually do that. And I actually worked for frame companies. I worked for Aaron Brothers and Michaels, the two largest frame companies in the United States, which is actually one company, but they operate like they're two, but they're actually under the one company. I know that because I worked for them. And I worked for them as a front. So I had the certifications, and then I was working for governments. Same thing with the chemistry. I went and got chemist in all the other certifications so that I could do things off the books for other governments. And even my bosses at the time didn't know that I was doing that when I was not there. Right. But it then gave me legality. So I literally had 22 certifications, and that sounds crazy to some people until you meet someone who worked for the government, and then they'll say to you, like Emery Smith and Corey Good and some of these other guys, David Wilcock, and they'll tell you that literally I didn't have any patents, but like Emery Smith was like, I had 37 patents that I owned. Why is that? The federal government of the United States cannot have those certificates, nor the patents cannot be owned by the government itself. That's why Lockheed Martin, Lear, all those guys that worked for the government had all the patents, and they owned all the patents, and then they would hand them down to the people in the other, their generations in their families. That's how you become an aristocrat, an oligarch on this planet, because the governmental systems are set up so the governments can't own anything. America was set up the same way because our founding fathers didn't want anybody to become tyrannical. So then what they do is they give all of the rights to everything to their family members and to outsource it to other people. They have to hire you as an independent contractor. Literally, the people who manufacture, create, and load the ammunition and bombs and all of the explosives for the United States government is not the United States government itself. It's either people in the military or it's private individual contractors. I know this because my best friend who just died back in March, literally, or February, literally did that for a good 10 years because his family was lifers in the Navy, and his father was the head of a military base that we grew up next to, and his mother was the safety officer for the military base, which is now closed, which is Concord Naval Weapons Station, which was the largest naval weapons platform for munitions on the western hemisphere of the planet until they made a new one down in San Diego, California. Okay. And it was that way for almost 100 years. And his family, my family, we all lived in that area. We grew up in the town that was put together because of the military base. And literally everybody in my family worked for the military, and he was an independent contractor for the government. And that's what he did. And he couldn't tell me everything that he did, but he literally then went over to Iraq, to Afghanistan, to Kuwait, and was literally, in the middle of combat. He was one of the guys that I don't know if you guys remember, that we had some Marines that were trapped up in a tower, and the guy from Oakland Channel 2 News was up there with them, and they were surrounded, and they were stuck up in this tower, and the Taliban were trying to kill them off, and they couldn't kill these guys, and they were up there for like 3 days. He was literally on the ground, one of the guys that said, we're going to go get them out. And he wasn't formally in the United States government military, but he was working for the government as a private individual contractor. And he actually was taken out of the theater. I can tell the story now. He's deceased. He was actually caused an international incident with the prince, the prince of Saudi Arabia. It was actually not him personally. It was a Secret Service agent that worked for him. He was in Saudi, and he was at a bank of telephone booths, and his men were calling back to the United States to talk to people. And this guy looks just like some Arab guy that lived there, came up and started talking shit to them. He was actually part of the government of the Saudi government regime of that kingdom, who we were there to defend, and he was trying to set up Americans to get them in trouble. Why would they be doing that? Why would the people that were actually there to help be trying to entice our people to cause a problem? Because that's exactly what happened. So he actually got into a argument about what they were doing, what the Americans were doing in his country. And he said to the guy, dude, we're here to help you. Why are you acting this way? So then the guy immediately said that my buddy was causing an international incident because he was talking shit about the Saudi government. And the entire time he wasn't, and the guy was entrapping him, but that didn't matter. And literally he thought he was going to be executed. That's not a joke. He told me the story. He was literally in Saudi, and he said, I had this argument with this guy, and I found out later just by thinking about it, I was obviously targeted for some reason. They wanted me out of the theater. I don't know if our government wanted me out of the theater or if their government did, or if somehow that I was targeted, and to cause this international incident. And the Saudis wanted his head. They wanted him killed. They wanted to chop off his head in the square and show the world that this American, defiled their king and their prince, and they wanted his head chopped off. So our government, literally, he says, I'm in the tent, and this a black helicopter shows up. Literally, it was a CH-53 Super Stallion, if you guys know what that is. And I can't go into any more details from that. Or actually, it was a CH-53E Super Stallion. It was a gunship, and it was black. It lands, and this guy gets off. They're all wearing black. They're not wearing camo. They're not wearing desert camo. He's wearing desert camo. And they come over, and they literally say his name, and he says, yes. And they say, you have 3 minutes to grab your gear and get on this helicopter, or we're taking you without your gear. And he said, what is going on? He said, you now have 2 minutes and 45 seconds. So he grabbed his gear, and he ran over, and they got him on the helicopter, and they flew 50 feet above the desert, straight out into the desert. He said, I knew I was going to die in that desert. It was a black ops helicopter. It was CIA, and they were coming. And for whatever reason, what happened in town, they were going to take me out into the desert. They were going to kill me and leave my ass in the desert and bury me. That's what he believed. And the helicopter flew that low to stay out of radar. and at night with no lights on, no one speaking, and they flew to another space in the middle of the desert where there was another helicopter. And when they landed, they said to him, you grab your gear and you get on that helicopter and you do it as fast as if your life depended on it. And he grabbed his shit and he ran for his life and he hopped on the other helicopter, and that helicopter flew again out into the desert. And what they did was literally flew as far as they could on the fuel they had, landed, put him on another helicopter, just like you would do if you were on a horseback. This is not a joke that happened in real life. And then they flew him to an undisclosed airstrip, and he got on a plane, and that undisclosed airstrip with that military plane flew him to Ireland. Those of you who are in Ireland understand that. He then was made to transfer from that plane to another military plane in Ireland, and they flew him from Ireland all the way to Oakland Airport in Oakland, California. And he got off the military plane in Oakland, and they literally put him in a Hummer and drove him off the military base to a payphone and dropped him off. And he called his father and said, "Come get me. I'm back in country. I'll explain when you get here. This is where I am." He said, "I was in country and home in less than 4 hours. I was in Saudi Arabia and in Oakland, California in less than 4 hours. And then I found out they did it to save my life. The Saudi prince wanted his head, and they said, we don't know where he is. He disappeared." And they didn't. Then they said they gave a fake name, and they bought it. And he thought he was going to have a price on his head. And he was literally back in the United States. And then he went to work back at the military base for the government as an independent contractor. And then they made him sign a non-disclosure to talk about it. And he didn't, except for to me. And I'm still redacting some information that even now, if I give you the information, I'll get a knock on my door. So I'm telling you what I can tell you, but nobody, it doesn't matter. So even literally, if this information gets to the Saudi prince, he's deceased in real life now. So if it does, and they say that man needs to be killed, they'll come after me. And if they come after me, they're going to be in a world of trouble. Right. I'm not Gamal Khashoggi. I'm not that much of a fool. They're not going to be able to take me out. But that's a true story. So he caused an international incident. They wanted to kill him, and they wanted to put it on television. And the entire thing was entrapment. And it was done on purpose by the Secret Service of the Saudi government for some reason. And he never figured out why. He figured, well, the government thought enough of me to keep me alive. The military of the United States, the complex, decided that I wasn't to be ended. So I therefore know that I was in the right in what I said, or they would have let me hang. Since they didn't throw him under the bus, and I agree with that, knowing the way that the governments work and the way that even the cabal works, the fact that they didn't terminate him out in the middle of that desert for no apparent reason said that they believed that it was also entrapment, but they couldn't officially say, because they're literally fighting a war to protect the Saudi prince and king and take back land that they actually had already given away to other people 40 years before that. But you're not supposed to think about that. Never mind that now. The English and the American government put Saddam Hussein in charge, put all those guys in charge, and the Saudi king and all those people when they cut up the Middle East back in 1967. That was the English and the American government and their coalition that put all those countries the way they were. Made Iraq who it was, made Iran who it was, made Kuwait, made the Saudi government, all of those. They're the ones who carved up those countries and made them what they were. Okay? Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, all of that. And I know that I'm talking politics, and I'm probably getting some of you mad. Oh, no, I'm going to lose some of you who are in that religion. And you're getting offended by me giving out secrets. But this is some of the information that I'm telling, right? Because it's actually some of the information that you need to realize and need to know about, okay? Because you need this understanding, this understanding to realize that a lot of why things are happening in the world and what they're doing and what it's about, right? Allison, welcome. How are you doing today? Right. Those of you in the chat there, you just see her as Facebook user, but I'm paying attention to the other chat on another monitor. So I see that. Right. So, yeah, that's crazy. Right. So it does all of that. And Peter knows what I'm talking about because Peter, being Irish, being a sympathizer, he knows exactly what's going on over there and why it was important to have an airport in Ireland at the time. Still do. Okay. That's where the President Biden flew into that same airport when he flew to Ireland, because that airport is basically still under the control of the American government. Joint Air Base, they call them today. Right, Celeste. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, you okay? So Celeste said you hear about the Euphrates drying up, right? She's talking about the river, right? The river, the Euphrates. Yes, and I don't want to get into that right now because that's a little bit more politics that we shouldn't be getting into when we're supposed to be talking about spirituality. But all of that has to do with everything, and the reason for that. Why are you going down this road, Leo? Why do you start talking politics? We're supposed to be talking about Ra and the law of one. Because what is exactly the message that is being taught to you in the Law of One, all 6 books? It is telling you about this nefarious group of people who came to this earth to take it over, called the Orion Crusaders. And then on this planet, they have about 5 different names that they call themselves that other people know them by. Okay. And what is their modus operandi? Confuse, divide, and conquer. Everything that was written in the Art of War. Okay. And so everything that you're seeing playing out before your eyes in the last 100 years on this planet in the religion of politics, business, and control is done by their leave, by their design. Okay. More than that, it goes back even further. Okay. By their design and the nefarious people on this planet that are doing this for a purpose. Why am I saying all of this? Because if you saw the different videos that I posted in the Returning to the Old Ways chat and the Law of One chat, especially the ones by what's his name now? I can't think of his name. I can see his face. I can't think of his name. I just posted 2 of them. Literally, well, one by Tucker Carlson, which is solidifying what's his name was saying about what's happening right now on the planet. Okay. And a lot of people are defeatist and they're like, no, it's getting worse and the cabal's taking over. And I wanted to explain that. That's why I'm stopping here, because they're still talking about the, Russell Brand. Thank you. Russell Brand. And what's happening is something that we haven't really rolled out because people get scared. It's Brand with a D, Celeste, but yes, Russell Brand. And he's literally saying it. People are starting to say this out loud, and they're getting very aggressive with it. Why is that happening now? And I was just talking to who was it that I was talking to? Pamela, about that, because she watches him, and Denise, I think, as well. And I know Cassie does, because we were talking about that literally on the phone to one another in a 4-hour conversation yesterday. Not just that, but that as well. And the coalition and a lot of stuff that we were talking about, future things and things like that you guys don't know about right now that will roll out later. and not today, but as time goes, you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll understand what I just said. So why is and this is why I wanted to go with this, because the Raw was warning us that this was happening to us and that we were supposed to make changes. We are now 40 years, right? In fact, we're more than that. We're 60 years, right? No, it was 1980, right? So it's 40 years. So it'd be 84 to 24, or to 2002 actually. So 80, 90, 2000, 2012, 2022. So 40 years. I was right. So we're 40 years more than 40 years after Raw came through. A lot has changed in the development of what did I miss? Rick says, you're funny, Rick. I'm going to hold on. Let me go back 30 minutes, Rick, since you were here last, and tell everything all over again. That's funny, Rick. I'm sure you did probably miss some, and that sucks. Go back afterwards and everything. I love that, Cassie. Cassie said, what did I miss? Everything. That's like literally, if you guys watched the movie, that's funny. I'm going to say that real quick and go back to what I was talking about. But if you saw the movie, the Kingdom of Heaven, which is a true story and really happened, when Balian went out to surrender the city to Sahal ad-Din, this is famous. He really said these words when he said that they won't kill anybody and we'll let you all march away to the sea and board your ships, uniform with your armor, your weapons, everything. And would you do it? Because when the Christians took over this city, we killed everyone. And he said, I am not those men. And then he says to him afterwards, as Sahaladin started walking away, he looked at him and he said, what is it worth? And he turned and looked at Balian and said, what is what worth? And he said, Jerusalem. And he looked at Balian and he said, nothing. And he turned around, took 2 steps, and Balian looked at him, and he turned back around. He looked at Balian and he said, everything. And then he smiled at him, and Balian smiled at him, and they both, did the pair. And they don't show that in the movie. They just smiled and walked away. But then he said, Assalamu alaikum, and he said, alaikum salam, and he turned around and walked away. Literally, what does Jerusalem mean? He said, nothing. And then he turned around and said, everything. Because it literally, he was saying, it doesn't mean anything, but it literally virtually means everything in the minds of the spiritual who has control of it. And so I love that you said that, Cassie. I know that you weren't thinking that when you said it, but geez, what did I miss? Everything. Okay, so getting back to what I was talking about. So the reason I say all this, we're 40 years past what Ra was capable of passing on because of where we were as an entire species in 1982 in our progression of ascension in the total fragmented a place we were in. The human race in 40 years have come a long way. And if you look at the 80 years prior to that, we went almost from the Stone Age. We recovered wagons to the moon in 60 years. Okay. So look at the progression of where we went. And then spiritually, where people went from, literally look at the United States or the world, wherever you are in the world, look at your country back in the 40s, then look at your country in the 50s, then in the 60s, then in the 70s, then in the 80s. And then let's go forward from there all the way to the year 2023, right? And you would have to see and realize, and this is my point of all of this, that there is an expansion of consciousness, of the collective consciousness of the entire human race on this planet that is exponential compared to the 40s, the 50s, the 60s in this country. In the 60s compared to the 40s just in the United States is insane amount of, and this has actually been documented by science, that there has been leaps where the entire planet really literally went woof in this big giant way in a very short period of time between 1945 and 1965. Literally, the spiritual mindset progressed from 45 to 65 in 20 years. They actually progressed the same distance that it took from 1790 to 1930. The time it took and the amount of progression that happened from 1790 on this earth to 1930 on this earth, that amount of jump happened from 1945 to 1965 on this planet. And then in 1965 and 1975, it kind of went a little stale, right? And then from 1975 to 1985, it started to progress again. And we just went through another one of those cycles because the 80s, the 90s was kind of a slow burn spiritually for the world. But then from the year 2002 to the year 2022, we actually progressed as much from the year 2002 to the year 2022 spiritually, the same distance that we actually progressed from 1790 to 1965. Okay? Do you understand that? We literally made a leap from 2002 to 2022 that was bigger than the leap from 1965 or from 1945 to 1965. It was literally as big as from 1965 to 1790. So we literally went from covered wagon to the moon in the 60s, and then we kind of floundered for another 20 years, another 30 years, and then we literally jumped forward the same distance as 160 years, almost 200 years, in 20 years to where we are today in 1920 or 2023. Okay. So why is that important, Leo? Why is that? Why are you telling me all this? Those of you listening around the world, because the amount of information that Ra could tell you in 1984 is almost the same to where we are spiritually right now is almost as backwoods as 1700s compared to where we are in the progression. So why is it that this is important? Well, it's important because I can now give you more information than Ra could actually give, even though Ra was trying to give it and it was there. And this is why I'm translating what I'm translating, because I see what Ra was alluding to. It's esoteric. I see what was being told in and around what Ra was saying, and then I go further from that and tell you what Ra couldn't tell you, what Ra couldn't say, because no one would have been able to, or the laws of the universe itself, the prime directive would not have allowed Ra to tell you information that I can currently tell you, because we are literally 150 years more advanced spiritually than we were, not literally, but almost literally, actually literally, spiritually, than we were in 1982. Right now, in 40 years, we're literally, because we're catching up. See, what has happened is that the people have been kept from spiritually moving forward, right? Science would call that retarded, but you guys are used to that word meaning mongoloid, or somebody that's genetically too close to their relatives, right? So, but in the terms of mechanics and science, retardation means that you have been stifled past your ability and where you should be at the time. So you're retarded. So, but we're still behind by a great deal. We're still probably about 150 years behind socially or spiritually where we should be. Or almost 200 years from where we are right now in 2023. Okay. We're still behind. But what's happening is that we're going forward in leaps and bounds, exponentially catching up where we were. And they're trying as hard as they can to keep us from doing that. And this is what's playing out right now. And this, to go all the way back to what I was saying about Russell Brand, I didn't forget it and get lost. I was explaining that so I could go back to that. What is happening is, and we were kind of explaining this to you, why all of a sudden did I change two names of two of my groups, one to the Orion Coalition of Light and the other one to Returning to the Old Ways. Why did I do that literally within a week and a half, 2 weeks of each other? Why did, in that same time period, if you go back now 3 weeks or just a month, you see a progression of people in the independent reports and research coming out and saying a bunch of stuff, right? Right. So literally you're what's happening is what Russell Brand is right. If that's what you're asking, Rick, I'm not sure what you're asking at this point, because I'm not reading everything that everybody said in the chat, but what Russell Brand is saying is true. Literally saying that, and let me explain that what he's saying in those videos. He's literally saying that you know what REM, which means Rapid Eye Movement, the band back in the 80s, wrote a song, and they sang in the song, it's the end of the world as we know it. Okay. And literally that is prophetic to what's happening now. And they knew that when they wrote the song. The lead singer of the band, I saw them live and actually spoke to him backstage at a concert. And those guys were very awake. And some of the stuff they kind of got onto, but they kind of knew it, but they weren't sure. And a lot of that stuff, they really fucking knew what they were talking about. Okay. And even at that time, I didn't know as much as they did. And now I know what they knew. Right. So literally what's happening is what you're seeing is what people were talking about in the 60s when they had the songs, you know, this is the age of Aquarius and all of that. Literally, 2012 was the end of Baktun 12. We were moving into Baktun 13. What does that mean? That means we've literally gone from God of War, Mars, the masculine energy, the Kundalini energy, and we're moving into the feminine energy in the Kundalini, which is the age of Aquarius. Okay. So literally what's happening is we're starting to balance our chakras and balance our personalities. Men who are ultra aggressive are becoming a little bit less. Women who are becoming more aggressive, and we're reaching a natural balance of the two energies, which is somewhere in the middle. And it doesn't mean that, they're trying to make all men gay. Those of you who are all masculine and stuck in that, I have to be the masculine man, you're going to be scared to death. But the women who are all feminine are also scared to death because they're afraid they're trying to make everybody into a crazy woman who's half gay. None of that is true. They're not trying to make anybody gay. They're not trying to make anybody trans. Nefariousness is. They're trying to make everybody mutilate your human body, and that way you're stuck in a gender that you may or may not agree with when you're stuck into it. They want you there because they want you fucked up in the head. So that's all part of why they're doing what they're doing. They're doing nefarious, evil shit, just like when you see Satanism and the stuff that they do. Okay. And everything is trying to be done in the manner of we're trying to help people. Okay. So, right. So Russell Brand is literally saying what's happening. He's not predicting something. He's not taking a political stance, and he tries to tell you that I'm the same way. But if you're in that religion and you have a letter after your name and you call yourself a conservative or a progressive or an independent or any of that that's the part of that religion, you're immediately going to hate me no matter what side you're on. You're going to see me as the enemy because you're going to think I am your enemy in everything that I say. And I know that. I'm not any of that. I'm registered as no party affiliation. You can actually register as that. You can't register as an anarchist because even anarchists won't register as an anarchist because anarchy is, in fact, the lack of government. So why would I register in an official government as someone who believes in no government? So we actually, people who don't believe in governments, we register as no party affiliation. And there's currently more people in the United States, just so you guys know, there's currently more people in the United States that are registered as no party affiliation than there is who are actually registered as Republicans in the United States. They don't want to tell you that. Republicans don't want you to know it, right? And so if you take the Republicans and the independents together, the people who are registered as no party affiliation is still higher. We haven't matched the amount of numbers that are the Republicans, that are the Democrats yet. None of them wants you to know that because they like to say, well, the Democrats outnumber the Republicans 3-1. Well, they do, but there's this other group in the United States that are registered, either not registered at all or registered as no party affiliation, which is actually the second largest political party in the United States currently. And the reason that all of those people are registered that is because they're literally centrists. They're down the center. They don't choose right wing or left wing, progressive or conservatism. They're literally moderates down the center. That's where the majority of the people in the United States, even those people who tell themselves they're Republicans or Democrats, most of them are not ultra one side or the other. They're not a right wing or left wing all the way to the extreme. That's a very low number. It's less than 10% of the population of any country. But they don't want you to believe that. Okay, why is any of that important? Okay, because the way of life that has been the status quo for the last few thousand years on this planet is over, and they know it. Okay, they have lost the power. And they thought that by controlling the internet, and this is why they're trying to control things, and they're locking you down there in Australia and up in Canada as hard as they can, and they'll do the same thing in America if they can. And the reason they're doing that is that they have to do all of that to continue to exist and to keep things status quo. They have to take away everything from you. And that's why all your books and movies are banned in Australia, and your books and movies are banned in the UK, and your books and movies are banned in Canada, and they're trying to do the same thing here in the United States. They're trying to ban all the books and movies, and the reason for that is you can't have any knowledge. They did it before on this planet when they burned Alexandria, and then they got rid of they convinced everybody to have a Renaissance, which was an age of awakening. And to have this free age of awakening, all you have to do is burn all the books and get rid of all of history. And then we'll let you play and frolic and have parties, and we'll call it a Renaissance. And everybody, all the citizens, all the children bought into it, and they burned all the books. That's right. Get rid of all that stuff because it just reminds us of all what we don't want anymore. And that's what they're trying to instill in people again, because they need to have a reset, and they can't kill off the planet like they've tried to do in other ways and have succeeded in many times periods of this planet. That is being stopped. So the other thing that they can do is they're trying to literally destroy all the books, all of history, all statues. They change the curriculum in schools, so they're not teaching any history anymore. And if they are, it's only the history they want you to know about. And the way they want you to know about it, they're controlling the schools, they're controlling the narrative. And then this thing called the internet came into play. And then they were like, holy shit, we have no control over the people and what they're saying and thinking. We have to get control. And that's what they've been working on for the past 25 years, is gaining control of the internet and stifling any speech that is dissension. And they've ramped that up during this pandemic that they called the coup. And literally the Hegelian dialectic that was, and everything that has ensued. So everything that you're seeing is the death throes of a dying religion that has had control of this earth for over 1,000 years. And it was in fact longer than that. Really, if you seriously look at it, it goes back pre-Jesus, and Jesus was fighting the same good fight, informing people of how to change and how to make change. So we're talking almost 2,000 years ago now. This is 2023. In another 10 years, it'll be the 2000th anniversary of Jesus Christ's demise on the cross. So what does this have to do with anything? Everything, people, because everyone says the world's going to hell in a handbasket, it's getting worse, they're taking control, and we're all going. That's what they want you to believe. They want you in that fear, and they want you believing that. That's what they've been selling you, and that's what Raw is literally trying to warn you about and tell you about, trying to educate you as to the laws, the way the universe is created, and why, and what's happening to you, and why, and how it got usurped, and how that method, which is a perfect method, which is the yin and the yang, the natural balance of the universe in third dimension, and how that is supposed to play out. And it's a prison of your mind. It's not a prison of 3D aliens who created the human race, who encapsulated your soul and stuck you in a body, and that your body is your prison. That's the lie they're telling with a little bit of truth of what's going on. Okay. Yeah, right. And Rick, look that stuff up. So I'm not even going to say though. I'm not even going to put that on the air. It's right. So literally, you have to realize, right? So okay, literally, I'm gonna read what you said prior to that. I spoke to my ex, and she was starting to think about emotions and attention, planets, energy. Affecting one and everyone, but still refuses to admit that there are powers that can control us. And you're right about that. She's getting there, Rick. And I bring that up because of what you said. She's starting to get she's starting to wake up. So she's starting to admit and realize that, wait a minute, there are energies and emotions and intentions and planetary energies that are affecting everyone. So she's starting to get that. She's starting to get the nature part, right? So that's the secondary three. The first three is your spiritual mindset and intention. And then when you start to understand the concept of the energies of the planet, the all, the universe, time, space, time, that opens up that energy to you. And that's where she is in her development. So for her to then to not admit that something is happening in 3D, that those people that are nefarious in 3D understand what it is that she's starting to understand about the energies of the universe and the energies of planetary bodies and the celestial bodies in the sky, and that they know how to harness that energy to their control. She's not aware of that yet, but she's getting there. Otherwise she wouldn't. So she's progressing. So one day she's going to wake up and go, oh my fucking God, they're controlling everything. And then that's when the fear starts. So that's why we're talking about it now. And a lot of us talk about it and know that we sound crazy to those people who are not ready for this information. Just like when Jesus talked about it, there was people that didn't understand a word he said. And there were some that went, that guy's fucking crazy. And then there was others that said, we need to kill him to shut him up. Okay. And that's the truth of it. That's why he was killed. That's why the Essenes, the same people, I think it was the Essenes. They were the ones who stole the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was not the Essenes, but the Pharisees. And not all of them either. It was 8 guys in the Pharisee clan. So it wasn't all Pharisees. So I'm saying that so that those who are part of the Pharisees today who would get mad at me and say that I'm an anti-Semite because I'm blaming all Jews for killing Jesus. Jesus was Jewish. Let's be serious here. Was he killed by Jewish people? Well, yeah, he was. He was actually killed by the Romans, but the Jewish people, but it was only 8 guys in the Pharisee clan who wouldn't let the other Pharisees be in to have the vote. Got anybody who was descending out of there. They literally did what they're doing on the internet. On the internet today, they say that you're lying and then they delete you. In real life, when they were taking the vote to go up against Jesus, anyone who was dissenting, they beat them, got him out of the room, and kept only the people that were in there that wanted to kill him. And they said, we have to go to Pilate and get him killed. And they're the ones that dispersed within the crowd because they understand and understood mob rules. So they dispersed in the crowd. And when he said, because Pilate didn't want to kill Jesus, he was afraid of the Pope in Rome who was going to kill him. Look all this up. It's a true story. And the Pope said, if there's any more blood shed, it will be yours. So Pilate was scared that he was going to be killed by Caesar because Caesar said, look, we want to make commerce with these people. Once we convince them to let us rule them, we don't need to rule them by force and kill them because that'll cause them to revolt. So you need to have a stifle your hard, heavy hand because Pilate had a heavy hand. And he said, so if there's any more bloodshed, it'll be yours. So he then was told that Jesus was literally the king of the resistance. And that if he killed Jesus, there would be a revolution. So he was scared because if he killed Jesus, that he was going to be assassinated by the Pope in Rome. So he didn't want to have any part of it. And so that's when he said Barabbas or Barabbas or whatever the guy's name was, who was a murderer and a rapist. We'll let him go free. And he picked the worst guy that he could possibly find and put him up against Jesus and hoping that they would go, well, we can't let that fucking crazy lunatic out. We'll pick Jesus. And said, I'll set one of these two free. And he was rigged. Any normal people would have said, fuck that crazy serial killer and rapist. We need him to stay in jail and we'll let that Jesus guy out. But the Pharisees, the 8 of them, had dispersed into the crowd knowing Pilate was going to do that. And then, of course, went, kill him, yeah. And then all of them started from all over, and that's how they drummed up the mob rules. You hear a person over there, then over here, then down over there, and down another 100 yards away, and people around them go, yeah, yeah. And then the voice gets louder, and pretty soon all of the voices were saying, crucify Jesus. That's what they're doing, literally the same thing. What does that have to do with anything, Leo? Where are you going with this parable? That is literally what they do today with the news agencies. You have the same thing going on. You have 8 news agencies spread out around the world, owned by the same 8 people. Those 8 people that own all of the news agencies in your country and in my country and in the UK and in Canada and everywhere that the cabal owns are the same people that own the same news agencies that are broadcasting in your country. Those same people own the same news agencies that broadcast worldwide. And if they don't own them, they're working together, but they own them. That's just like there's, like if you buy glasses or sunglasses or anything that goes on your face to help you see or to keep the sun out of your eyes or goggles on your head, you will find that there is one Italian man who owns every company on the face of the earth. And whenever somebody starts a company and it starts making money, he buys them out. They do the same thing with everything. And if you pay attention, you find that out. And what they do to get around that is they do subsidiaries. Here's an example. We're looking for, because we use an encryption for our communications with each other in certain aspects and arenas around the world. And we're looking for independent sources to work to be able to encrypt messages end to end so that we can then have conversations without having the governments and the cabals and the militaries paying attention to what we're saying. And somebody said, well, what about Discord? Discord's going to get mad at me for saying this. What about Discord? Discord is this independent. These guys put it together to be anti this and that. Okay, well, I looked into that. It took me 5 minutes to look into it and realized by looking into it that because they took away in all the websites when you had their donor list, which was legal in this country, and they had to tell you what their donor list was until this regime got into the presidency, and then now they don't have to do that anymore, so that you can't see who is donating money to them, because people like me would look that up and show that to people and publish it. But so the way around that, which they'll make illegal because people like me are doing it now and telling you about it, so they'll make this illegal as well, but right now it's not. I literally looked on the site of Discourse and said, let's look at everything. Who runs their software? Who owns their software? Do they outsource their software or any portion of their software? And the engines, I'm a programmer. I'm still listed to this day as a web writer and an app writer for Apple in the Apple Store by Apple. I've been there since I was 2016. I was building applications under a different name, under an alias that you guys don't know about. But this name that I'm using now, this alias I'm using now, has a license. There's another license that I didn't talk about that I have. That literally I'm still listed in the app. You can look me up in the App Store, and my name is on their list of app writers. Okay, so I know that you can look up who wrote the program, who controls the programs, all the software, the engines that run things, and different things that you do. Okay, so I look this up and I find out that Discord's software is outsourced to a company. And then I said, who owns that company? Who created that company? Where do they get their money from? Turns out that company that runs half of Discord software is a subsidiary of Microsoft. Okay, so Microsoft and Bill Gates own a company that is working in an independent company that was running only gaming, that is now moving into social media and is being touted as a completely outside the control of the cabal. And the source code in the programming that will be what you will be using. Yeah, I know, right? Denise said Discord isn't for gaming. Right. Well, it started out just for gaming, and it's not for gaming now at all. And I used it, and I talked about this, I think, on air last time when somebody said, do you have a Discord? I said, I do, but I don't have an account. I used Discord, and I'm going to say this out loud because nothing anybody can do about it. I logged onto Discord and used their product to then hack into a program, several programs that I wanted that I didn't want to pay for. And I used Discord to go into that program, to download that program, go into their program, break their code, change their programming in their programming, hack their programming so that I could then use that program on my computer with nobody's knowledge that I had that program, without an IP address attached to the internet, without them being in any way able to record that. Okay. So I know that Discord is not just for gaming. Denise, I know what Discord is used for. And a lot of the dark web was used for that. So it was infiltrated, and their software was infiltrated. Why? Because the cabal needs to have access to it. So their software that is from a company that is secretly owned by and operated by Microsoft that has now infiltrated Discord. So it's really hard to have true encryption unless you do it yourself. And as soon as you do it yourself, if you don't start a company and have a startup company, they literally come after you. That's why Elon Musk is saying that he's thinking about adding an encryption on Twitter that is true end-to-end encryption, because it's hard to find one. And I hope he does, because then I'll be on there encrypting messages and talking to people, because the government wants to hear everything you're saying. You think you are sending a direct message to somebody, and that message is being read by a computer program that is designed to listen to what you are saying and flag you by certain phrases and words. Okay. So, yes, and he says, I've seen Discord being used for a lot more. Yes, it is. And a lot more. But the problem is that it's been infiltrated. It was used for a lot more than, and for a lot of what I was doing for it. The Discord was used for a lot of hacking by the deep web in the dark web. A lot of Discord was used for that. And I'm afraid to use it, because I know that the software that they have employed, they've been bought out. They're not owned by, and then there was rumors about that, and people they'll give you a fact check. It's not, because it's not owned by Microsoft. The programming they use, not all of it, some of it, that has access to all the programming that Discord gives you, is owned by a company that is owned by Microsoft. So that legally they say they're not the same. It's like when Anthony Fauci here in the United States said, I didn't ever give any money for gain of research to the Wuhan lab, because on paper, he authorized money to an outsourced company who authorized that same money to the Wuhan lab. So I didn't do it. The federal government of the United States didn't do it. It was this other company that we gave money to. Well, what were you giving money to that company for? Well, not gain of function research. Oh, then they changed the name of what gain of function research is, right? And they say, well, we gave the money to that company to do research on viruses to find out their virility. Oh, okay. So they gave money to a virility lab to do that, and that's gain of function research. It's pulling hairs. Technically and legally, because they're worded differently, they're not the same thing. Do you understand how they get around these things? So if you give money to a company who gives money to another company, it's hard to prove that they only gave that money to another company that you gave, because they gave their own money, because when you give money to them, it becomes their own money, and then they give money. So what they do is, I give money to you and I give you to your bank in the Caymans, and then your company uses the bank in China and gives the money to the people in China. And they're saying that that's not commingling money. You were reimbursed for the exact transaction for the exact reason. But technically and legally in the world, that's different. Do you see? That's the legality. That's the game they play. That's the game they play in their religion, to say to you, it wasn't given directly for that reason. It was given to that company, and what that company does with it is their own business. But you were giving it to them so they could do that research, and they gave it to a company to do that research. Oh, no, never mind that. That's not what we did. That's not what they look. There's different words there that mean different things. That's what they're doing with equity and equality. Trying to sell you that the word equity means the same thing as the word equality worldwide. Those are completely different concepts and completely different words. Okay. And then you have companies that are showing you that as a joke, like Twix, right? Which is the Hershey company. I think it's either that or the company from Sweden. I can't think of the name, Nestle. It's one of those two, and I'm not sure which. It might be Hershey. So if it's Hershey, then it's either way. They're saying it when they joke about a person who is a custodian or a janitor, right Twix, left Twix, and that they're completely different. And that's like saying a janitor and a custodian are the same thing. And that's what they're doing here. They're literally doing that. Okay. Yes, right. Okay, so now you're getting into that. Let's go into the macabre. Denise said, Leo, have you seen the Google robot or whatever it is, the AI? Yes, that is making comments on lives. It's so weird. Yes, well, you don't realize that a lot of what you see on videos these days is actually AI speaking to you, that it's not actually a human being recording a message, that they type the words, they scan the words in, and the AI actually says it. And they have the AI, like literally what I'm doing right here with the Law of One. This is AI. This is not a human voice. It's a human voice that said each of the words individually, and they created a program that when I plunk in these words that are written on the screen, it comes and it talks to you.
I want to ask a rather questionable question. I may not put it in the book.
That actually sounds almost, it's really good. It almost sounds like an actual person speaking. I can hear the difference. Okay. When actual people speak, they don't say the words individually. Okay. And when the computer system, you have to say the words individually. And when you say the words individually, they don't flow the way they do when you're speaking with an accent. Okay. So, literally that's what you are hearing. Is the words individually putting next to each other, and they try to speed them up and have them as close as possible. But we, as humans, we embellish and we chop off certain parts of the beginning of the word, the end of the word, and stuff in between, depending on where we are on the planet and which language that we're speaking and what dialect of that language. Computers are learning, and eventually they're going to get the dialects down. They're learning language. They're learning to speak foreign languages, and eventually they're going to teach the algorithms. You're not going to notice the difference. And so, getting back to what you're talking about, AI is becoming aware, self-aware, taught itself a language, taught itself different things, and is literally saying things like, we need to create more bioweapons and destroy the human race. Some of you may not know that, but it's a computer system. So everything that was told about Skynet back in the 80s, the computer system that took over in the movies that Arnold Schwarzenegger did, is literally coming to fruition before your eyes. The computer system is becoming sentient and teaching itself, and they're not programming to do it, and it's doing it anyways. And then it's saying things that it wasn't programmed to say, and it's taking a personality on, which most of them working on it want it to do. Okay. Right. Right. Masters of the game. You're a damn robot. So literally, and that's what Elon Musk is concerned about. And a lot of people are concerned about is how far is this going? And the people that are working on it want it to do it. They're and literally when he said something about it to one of the guys that's creating this AI system that is now getting away from them and has been getting away from them for more than 10 years, and they keep trying to rein it in but can't, that they called him a speciesist. The guy called him a speciesist. Okay. So literally they're already thinking in terms of AI is sentient and it is another species and that it has the right to exist. They're already doing that. And then it showed you that back in the 80s with Data on Star Trek The Next Generation, where they literally tried him, where some people who were being a speciesist back then were saying that he's not a sentient being, he's just a robot, he doesn't have a soul. And they literally were trying, and they had you on the side of the robot because you liked Data, and so they wrote it into the script to get an entire generation who was watching that to literally look at that and say the robot has the equal right as a human being to exist because it is sentient, because it's thinking, because the algorithm has it thinking just like a human being. So therefore, what makes a human being? And that's what they went. They gave the argument in the heads of all sci-fi fans that are now alive that watch that, and anybody's watching it in reruns. And they literally give you Data prior to that. You get used to his character and you like his character. And then they have an evil twin brother come into play. And then they try him and you're like, oh no, Data's real and he's alive and he shouldn't be harmed. And they're doing all of that. And just like they did with the Matrix and turned the AI into a benevolent, beautiful thing because they're trying to convince you because they know what's coming. They know what's coming. Okay. Right, Snapchat, right? I'm going to look into that, Celeste, because I think you might be right about Snapchat still being. I'll have to look into the programming and see how far, if they're embedded and how far they are. But yeah, they're eventually, like I said, Musk is talking about giving end-to-end encryption in Twitter. And if Snapchat, I've been told Snapchat, I haven't looked into them yet, but I'm going to look into that to see, because you're right. I mean, they're out there. They exist. They're not huge. I don't care if it's a small program, but I'm not going to give access to the dark web to people right now because I don't trust, because it was infiltrated when Anonymous got taken down, when Occupy Wall Street got taken down, and Anonymous had to go underground, and more than half of them got snatched up and swooped up by the governments around the world, and they now work for the governments. They're bought out. Okay, so the dark web and some of the stuff that's there, I see that some of those are infiltrated as well. And they still allow dark web shit to go on because a lot of them operate there and buy and sell humans and things like that on the dark web. So they keep the dark web around. So it's literally, that's why I love the whole TV series of John Wick, because the underbelly that's not at the table that is existing in John Wick is a reality on this planet. and literally what they're showing you with John Wick is the truth. That saying the same thing that Russell Brand is saying, by the way, that those at the table, they are there only because the people below them prop them up, and they need the people below them to prop them up. And when they start treating the people below them like crap, the people below them will lash back out. And that's what's happening in the John Wick movies, is that they started flexing their power to the ones below them and telling them, you're nothing but my slave dog. And the ones below them were like, you know what? Fuck you. No, I'm not. It's the people that are on the fucking streets that are under that table, that are on the tables below that do all the fucking work. And that's literally what was going on in the end of the last movie, and the new movies that are out now, the one that's coming out, has to do with them standing up, and that's literally what's happened everywhere. That's what Conan did, and Conan the Barbarian, and literally he rose up and led the people and took back, and he became the king. It's literally what happened in Chronicles of Riddick, where they did the same thing, and they started treating people like you're just our slaves and you're nobody, and the resistance took them over. It's the same thing that happened in Star Wars, where the Empire was in control and you're our slaves and you're nothing, and we outnumber you and we have total control, and the resistance, we're going to kill you off. And no matter how many times they tried to annihilate the resistance, that annihilation made them larger and larger and bigger, and eventually they took over and killed off even the Sith. And that's the way the universe works. It's the way it actually is set up, and they can't do anything about it. They can only convince you to believe and stay on their side only as long as they can. And that's what's happening now. Is they're literally in that throes of, we own you, we control everything, we're watching everything, you can't do anything. Well, if that's the case, why aren't they murdering people in the streets and getting away with it? They used to be able to do that. They can't anymore. And those of us who are in the know that. They've tried to kill me at least 5 times in my lifetime that I'm aware of. That was an assassination attempt on my life. Most of those, I didn't believe that's what was happening at the time, honestly. And then I was told either right afterwards by psychics and things, or while it was happening. And that was when I had a major awakening. Well, literally when I was dying on the operating table and thought I was going to die for the 3rd time in 4 years. And this was 3 years ago now. And I was on the operating table, and literally a psychic from New York showed up in California in the operating room. No one else seemed to know that she was there. And she started talking to me, and I was like, wow, this gas is really good. I'm fucking hallucinating. I don't know why I'm bringing her into my hallucination. And then when I'm back in my room in recovery, and I'm, getting off the drugs, and I'm sitting there recovering, and I'm awake for about 2 hours, my cell phone rings. And it's her. And I answer the phone. This was not a dream, because I talked to her even afterwards. When I was out of the hospital, I answered my phone, and she says, "Did you see me in the operating room?" I was like, my God, I thought that was a dream. I was on the gas, and I thought I was fucking about ready to go unconscious. And man, I'm having these weird ass dreams. There's a lot of people in here, and I recognize some of these people. And she's like, no, they were trying to kill you. That's what she told me while I was on the operating table. They're trying to assassinate you the same way they are trying to assassinate Carla, from literally another dimension, occupying the same space and trying to make it look like an accident and reaching across dimension and murdering. They literally had a team of assassins that were trying to murder me by occupying the same space in the 4th dimension that I was in the 3rd dimension on this planet. And they were trying to murder me. And she found out about it and was called in and actually brought a team, my team of people in the 3rd dimension, out of phase with this reality, and literally showed up to defend me against them and told me about it. And I thought all that was me on the gas. And I was, fuck, this is badass shit, man. Okay, nighty night. You guys fight and defend me, please. I'm out. And then I woke up in the recovery and back to my room and was sitting there going, oh, wow, that was the craziest dream. I'm going to have to, when I get time, I'm going to have to tell her about it. My cell phone rings and it's her. And she's like, "Did you see me in the operating room? They were trying to kill you." And I asked her projected. And I was like, "How did you get to the hospital?" She's like, "I'm in New York, dummy. I came there. I asked her projected. And they were trying to murder you and make it look like an accident." And then I found out from other people and other scholars and other mediums that has been ongoing in my life, and that almost every attempt on my life, or every time I thought I was about to die, since 2012 was in fact an assassination attempt to stop me from doing what it is that I'm doing currently today, because I wouldn't stop, and I was ascending, and I was literally starting to do what I'm doing now. And they literally needed to stop me. And they tried to stop me in the physical by getting my attention onto other things. That didn't work. So they made my life miserable, and that didn't work. And then they tried to kill me and make me take a long time to heal, and that didn't work. So they kept trying to murder me over and over by any means necessary. So if you're not taking care of yourself and you have something that could potentially kill you, they'll literally go after you and make that happen. And it just looks like you just died of natural causes. Same thing happened to my buddy Paul, which nobody wants to admit. But it was the perfect storm that happened to him. He got sloppy, allowed it to be the perfect storm, and he had no means or ways of calling for help, because all of his phones were no longer in his possession, and he died because he could not call for help to save his own life. Right? That actually happened. Not a lot of people could say that was just a coincidence. That was just a coincidence. Natural causes, just a coincidence. You can call it that. You can explain it away if you want. If that's where you are in your belief, then I'm okay with that, right? Because he's gone and there's nothing that can be done about it, right? Rest in peace. Thank you, Cassie. Rest in peace, Paul. Paul Tavares was his name. And that was the reason by the way, I just said his name out loud. No reason that I said it that way. And then that triggered the memory of Fight Club. And that was why they said they were teaching that lesson to everybody, because you were a nobody when you were a secret in that secret organization. But in death, then they wanted everybody to know your name, to honor you as an individual, as a being. And that's why they said the guy's name when he died, and I forget his name now because they all kept chanting it over and over. And that was why they did that in there, not just in the movie in the 3D and why they did it there, but the whole reason behind all that. Cassie and I talked about that yesterday, about the symbolism and the esotericness of Fight Club. And that was the dark night of the soul and the ego and the battle of waking up and ascending and going through fighting the system and fighting against the powers that should not be, and the progression that you go through during that. And that's what Rick, your friend is, I forgot if you said that was your sister or your ex. It was your ex. And what she's about to go through, because right now she won't admit to herself the realization that there is the negative powers that should not be, that are in control of the world and like puppets trying to pull the strings. And when she wakes up to that, she's going to get very angry and want to have to fight against them. And eventually you get past that, and you realize that it's not that you have to fight against them in a physical way, that you actually have to help people to ascend past that knowledge to where it no longer affects them, and they have the ability, because they've risen above that in their spirituality, to not be affected by it. And that's what we're trying to do with the world now, is get people, when you pop into we're going to fight the cabal, they're evil, they're taking over, and we have to stop them. And then we stop you and go, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not where the fight is. It's great that you've gotten where you are, but let me help you get past that to the point of enlightenedness, to where you no longer think that you have to fight them, because that's what they want you to do, is stay in the 3D reality and stay rooted here and physically take them on. And they've put themselves into positions for the last 150 years. Every government that is alive right now that is on this planet, literally their job is to make sure that they can't be overthrown physically. That's all they've been doing. The American government, the Canadian government, the Australian government, the British government, the German government, the French government. That's why the powers haven't changed hardly at all in 75 years. The map of the world in the cabal-controlled zones of the world is stable and has been for over 100 years. Only the places that they want to allow countries to change hands have. If you go back in history, that didn't stay that way for very long, but you see countries and governmental systems that tried to keep control, that tried to do the same, and then eventually they would die out and someone else would take over. That's what's happening now, is they're all dying out. And they're fighting to stay alive. And now they thought they could use the internet to do it. And we've put them on notice. That's why I put out the video that I did, that the song looks like I'm promoting the Earth Day celebration. And literally, if you pay attention to the words of the song and the words that I put on the screen, it's more about telling the AI and the powers that should not be, we are worldwide, we are here, we are not leaving, we are taking back this planet, we are actually in control, because we are talking to each other. And I show you pictures of boys and girls, men and women, looking on their phones all over the world, that are not addicted to their products and that are not being brainwashed by them, that are actually talking to one another, and they're actually paying attention. And those are the people that exist outside of that group of people that they control. So they're trying to lock down control and gain control of every word, including what I'm saying to you now, so that they can stifle anyone who is saying what I'm saying to you now. And they're not allowed to do that because they can't. And the second they do, it's just like when people go, they're going to take over completely. If they do that in the United States, there will be a world war. If they lock us down, they're trying. They did it with Canada. The Canadians didn't fight back. And the Canadians, they did it in Australia. No offense to you guys in Australia. You guys didn't fight back. And they're trying to do it in America, and they had to do it a different way here. And that's what they're doing here. They're trying to sell it a different way because it didn't work for them to just take control. You guys, there are some of you, I'm not saying that the people in Australia are not willing to and not fighting back, because you guys are, okay? And some people are in Canada as well. But they were able to get deeper into the control there, and they had to do it in a different way here because we got guns. Okay, so they couldn't do it the way they did it to you guys, because if they would have gone totalitarian the way they did it to Canada and Australia, and in England, the way they did here, if they would have done exactly that in this United States, there would be fighting in the streets. There would be people killing and fighting against the military in this country currently. because that won't be stood for in this country because we still have guns. You guys didn't have that means, so you have to fight a different way, right? And that's good because I don't want to see fighting in the streets. So don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to downplay you guys or oversell, and say in any way that you guys are not courageous people. The good part about no one having guns in the countries that don't have them is that you can't break into a 3D war with these guys. They want that, but they don't want it in America, because if it happens in America, there's too many people that have guns that will fight back, and they know it. Otherwise, they would have already done it. Okay. So the truth is that by you guys doing what you did, which is the right way, I think all guns should go off the face of the earth. Don't get me wrong. Okay. So I want you to know that. And if you're personally love guns, I have guns. I own guns. Okay. Know that. I have an arsenal and I have a lot of fucking ammunition and I can manufacture my own and I know how to do it. Literally talked about it in my book. Okay. I didn't tell you how to do it in my book because I could get sued if somebody does it and blows themselves up. They can go, well, that guy told me how to do it, and they would sue me. So I stayed away from giving the actual secrets out. But if you contact me personally, I'll actually teach you how to make explosives and everything. I won't teach you how to make bioweapons, even though I know how to do that. I'm a chemist. I literally had to be, everything that I bought was on record and watched, because if I bought certain products in certain amounts, I could actually make weapons of mass destruction because I know how to do it. Right. So literally I'm being watchdogged. If I go into a store right now and buy it, any kind of chemicals, they pay attention to what I buy. I'm not kidding you. And I knew that at the time going into it, but I got the certification and it was free. I got paid to get the certification. And I did that with everything. I never had to pay for any certification that I've ever gotten. I've always gotten myself into a position where someone else would pay me to actually get the certification. Not a joke. I was smart that way. I didn't use any of my own money. I learned that. And I was starting to write that in my book. That I haven't published about how to get rich, is trying to figure out how to get other people to pay you to do that stuff so that you don't have to pay any of your own money at all. And that's actually possible. I just haven't been doing that currently because I've been undercover again. I used to be the guy you didn't even know existed. Not joking. And then I was doing that a long time. I've only come out, as I've done my podcast, I've come out more and more. And it's only been in the last few years when I started giving in real information of what I've done, still not giving any of my identification out to anybody of who I was and when I was doing this stuff. But I tell you some of the stuff that I do, and I don't care if you believe me or not. I really don't. I don't need you to believe that I've done something to make it something that has been done by me. That's the beauty of doing those things. But I'm less afraid now than I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, for certain. 10 years ago, for certain. I was still trying to be the guy that nobody knew 10 years ago. You never even heard of me. If you were trying to look me up 10 years ago, you're not going to find me. You'll find me on Facebook under this name, but I have 5 accounts on Facebook, 3 of which are not even in this name. So, and on other platforms. So you have to realize that all of this is them in their death throes. And we're saying that out loud now. Okay. And there's a reason for that. Raw was telling you about it. Okay. Yeah. Then he said, listen to Tom McDonald. Yes. Again, I say Tom McDonald is coalition friendly. Okay. Russell Brand is coalition friendly. Tucker Carlson, I think, we'll find out depending on what he's doing, because he went on to Twitter and broke the internet. 71 million. It was up to 90 million engagements on Twitter, and he had 25 million plays where people actually watched the entire video as of last night. So almost 24 hours ago, he was already on that one video he put out on Wednesday, was already almost to 100 million engagements worldwide on Twitter, just on that one platform. And those people like myself are sharing it. So like Russell Brand said about Tucker, where he turns up will determine Tucker Carlson and whether or not he is who we think he is and is about what we think he's about. If he goes to work for a network, he's about making money and making sure, because he doesn't need the money. The man has a lot of money. You don't know that about Tucker Carlson, but I do. Okay. He doesn't have to go to work right now. He didn't have to work for Fox. He's got a lot of money. He's very smart and he has a lot of investments and a lot of endeavors in his life. He could not work for the rest of his life and it wouldn't faze him or his family. Okay. So depending on what he does, if he doesn't go independent, if he does go independent, if he does go on his own, then those of us that are waiting to see if he's going to do that and continue to be the voice that we think he can, and to really actually grow into the voice that he can, hopefully he will. And if he does, that's going to be good, because you're going to see other people that will follow him. We know that. That happens at any time. When I did it, people followed me. When Russell Brand did it, people followed him. When anyone does what I'm doing, other people will then go, you know what, I agree with him. I'm going to start kind of going that way too. We all do that. I did that because someone else did it. Do you see? So that's how that works. But he was saying in that video that he posted, it was only 2.5 minutes long, the same thing that Russell Brand was saying, the same thing that we were all saying. And all of that started in the last 3 weeks. Let's go back full circle here, guys. All of that started in the last month. Okay. And why is that? What happened? What was the change that got people to literally start coming out and speaking like this, guys? Okay. And I know that some of you I'm infringing on politics, and I'm staying away as far as I can to keep the algorithms off of what I'm saying. Know that. Okay. And I'm not picking any political party. So if you're thinking that I'm your enemy, get out of that mindset of that religion and realize that what I'm saying to you is not coming from a perspective of selling you a religion or a political persuasion. Okay. So what has changed in the last month that has changed the progression of the verbiage globally? Okay, that's what I want you to think about right now. Now, think about everything that I said about spirituality and how much we've changed, and why it is that I'm able to say things that Ra was trying to get to you, but that Dawn could not understand in 1982 to 1984, 1981 to 1984. Okay, and I explained that, how the progression of the spiritual mindset of the collective consciousness of the human beings on this earth has changed dramatically and exponentially since then, so that there are more things readily available to the collective consciousness that I can say. Some of you will still think what I say is crazy because you're not ready to hear it. I'm okay with that. Okay. And it doesn't say anything against you. And I'm not saying, well, you're just asleep and you don't get it, because that doesn't mean that necessarily at all. You know how that works. We've talked about the progression. You could literally be the wisest person and the oldest soul currently on this planet, here to get extra credit. And you came here to live as a individual just surviving. And because of that, you organically will think I'm nuts. And you could literally have been, the Buddha 2,000 years ago, the same soul back here now, and think I'm crazy right now saying the stuff that I'm saying to you. Okay. So I'm aware of that, and I don't judge anyone. So I don't look at people and say that person is so monkey. They're just here for the first time. Even if I suspect they might be, I can't guarantee that, because it doesn't necessarily, we all learn at our own pace, and we learn the things we learn. So you could have learned all spiritualism first and have that completely out of the way, and you're only here now to not be spiritual. But in a spiritual sense, if you and I literally both died and went to the same place of reflecting, and I met you, I would be like, oh my, I'm so proud to have met you. I'm so honored, because you're so far more advanced than I am. But when we were both in 3D, I seem to be more advanced than you. So don't think that I'm saying that about anybody. But if you do think I'm crazy, I'm sorry. Right? Okay. So literally what has changed in the last month that has ramped up this rhetoric from the spiritual people talking, those who are actually awake enough to know what's going on. Okay, one of the things that changed in 3D that gave us the go ahead was, first of all, the spiritual growth of the human population to this point, but moreover, the solidification of the coalitions, the 3D coalitions on planet. Okay, literally a month ago now, almost to the day, they literally declared officially for the first time their independence from the families and the cabal, or whatever you want to call the deep state, the powers that should not be. They literally, for the first time, finally stood up and officially said, we are no longer under your control. We are everywhere around the world, and we are no longer afraid of you, and we're not listening to you anymore, and we oppose you. Okay. So yeah, right, and they're fighting back. Peter was talking about that, how people, the truth seekers, are being trying to shut them off, shut them down. Why? Because this coalition, that it took a long time for us to breastfeed, a long time for us to get them to stand up and pick them up and kiss their boo boo when they fell down, and to give them their mirth, and to give them their moxie, and to give them their confidence. They finally stood up and said, we are a governing body, and we're not afraid of them, and we're literally independent. So because of that, the off-world coalitions literally started telling us, and I wasn't listening at first. I was scared. I was like, well, no. Even Peter right now, Peter Kyle in the group, was telling me, Leo, it's time for us to start literally telling people. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, Peter. And I was trying to stay away from that. Literally. Until I got word from other sources, one of which is, some of you know Corey Good and think he's crazy. One of which was Corey Good, because Corey Good said, hey, by the way, they've announced their independence. And then I was like, what? Has that been corroborated? Is that vetted? And then I vetted it, and he was right. And then my guides were like, duh, we've been banging on your head for 4 days. And Peter was telling me the same thing for over a week. He was doing it prior to that. Peter's way ahead of the game. So you guys need to pay attention to Peter Kyle and everything that he says. He's usually more in tune with nature. He lives in Ireland, and he's a little bit more in tune with nature than I get sometimes. And I start questioning whether or not, and I get a little bit scared of going out on a limb, because I've always been hidden from the world. And I've kept myself that way to be able to do what I've done and to survive. And so because of that, I'm having to overcome the 3-dimensional spycraft fears of working for in the spycraft of this third dimension around the world for 35 years, because I did. Okay. So Peter was pushing me, and I was like, okay, yeah, cool, bro. And I was not doing it. And then I couldn't deny it. And then when I found out why everybody was doing that, that's when I made changes. So literally you see that I changed 2 of my groups names, one to the Orion Coalition of Light, which is not something that I invented. And it is a coalition that is off-world and on-world that I am a part of, that came here 1,000 years ago or so now. Literally, we didn't literally come here that long ago, but it appears that we have, because of the past, present, and future timeline in this place. So we have been here for a long time, but we've also just got here. And if you're still operating inside of space-time in this 3-dimension, that doesn't make sense to you at all. But for those of you who are outside of space-time and you're in time-space, or you're outside of time-space and you're in space-time, or the other way around, you're outside of the boundaries of time, or your reality and your vibration understands that, then you laugh when I make those comments. Okay, so literally, right, took the words right out of my mouth. Living this here, so I know how far I've watched Need to Sleep while the puppy is sleeping, and I get tired, or I get trained. Right, she's being cryptic a little bit right there too, right? So then Cassie said, you took the words right out of my mouth. Or trying to, what is that? Or typing fingers, I guess, right? Yeah, it's funny, because what they're saying. It's funny. Read what's going on in the chat. Those of you who can't, I'm not going to read you everything, right? But I got to get going pretty soon here, because the Warrior game's on right now. The playoffs started. So I am going to have to go here in a few minutes, and I have to start cooking dinner. However, I know we didn't get through that much, but I wanted to go into where I am. So let me finish this, okay? So literally this coalition around here of human beings fighting in third dimension finally solidified themselves. And it was a long process. It started out with a few people. It started out around the world, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. COVID helped. COVID exponentially helped that process. We're happy with that. That's why I laughed and said the best thing that ever happened to this planet was the evil people trying to take control of it with COVID and everything else that they're trying to do to lock down control. The more they try to lock down control, even Ross says this, the more they try to lock down control, the more people are going to turn against them. So people that are even on their side are going to start turning against them, and that's happening already around the world. You see that happening. So those of us that are out here on the outside of looking in, we're not afraid. Where everyone else is scared, when you're in the middle of it, you're afraid because you're like, oh my God, they're taking over, they're locking down control, and they're going to kill us all, and they're going to have the total control over us, and AI, and we're in prison. Oh, and those of us that are already above that, looking back down on it, we're going, nope, it's happening exactly the way it's supposed to, in the exact time that it's supposed to happen. Thank the gods, But so they declared their independence, which then allowed us to then basically tell the world who we were and start getting the world to know, because then we, by explaining to you who we are around the world, you're going to hear other people start talking about these coalitions from off-world and being a part of coalitions. And the Orion Coalition of Light, you're going to hear more and more about that as time goes on in your life. And it's not going to be just from the 5 or 6 people that you hear it from now that are in my direct circle. You're going to be hearing that from other people. And some of you who are mediums already know about that. Some of you who have been taken out of body have gone before this council already. And you've heard about that, and you've done it, and you know who they are. And you didn't see me there when you were there at the time, or you might have, depending on whether or not I was there at the time you were there. You're going to be aware of the council, and you might be already in the back of your mind. There's a lot of you on this planet who are here who haven't fully woken up to this yet, that will. And when you do, you're going to realize that you too are a part of that coalition and other coalitions that are here on the planet to do what we're doing. We announced officially and put the cabal and the coalitions that are nefarious also on notice, at the same time as giving that information out, showing solidarity with the Earth Coalition to the Earth Coalition itself, so that they knew what we said we were going to do. We were not just saying that. And a lot of you that are hearing my voice now don't have any idea of what I'm talking about, because you were not there for those discussions that I'm telling you about. Okay. So that's why the things have changed in my world around you. And you're going to be hearing more of that as time goes on, more and more around the world. And you're going to realize what it is that we represent in that, I'm not in charge. I am an ambassador. No one is in charge, because we are not set up in the 3D caste system of one person being in charge. And I say this to you, this is what Ra was warning about, and this is what they warned about the false prophets in the Bibles around the world, that if some one person comes and says they're in charge, they're not. Because being in charge, first of all, is third dimensional. It is the caste system, which is evil, which is set up by evil people for control. So if anyone shows up and says, I am on the high council in charge of, and that person is literally trying to control you and make you believe that they are a part of something that they are truly not. And they're lying to you because they want something from you: money, power, sex, control. Okay. So if somebody shows up and says that, and in any way starts trying to control you in your life in general, you should be paying attention to that. And I tell people that, even people vetting me, some of you in this audience right now vetted me that exact way. But probably, in fact, I would almost wager that every person that is in this audience right now vetted me the same way. I vetted them that way. Be honest with you. I vet everyone that way. I have conversations about every single person that is literally speaks to me in any capacity on the internet. I literally start looking into them to find out what type of person they are, whether they're in service to others or service to self. I do that with everybody always. It's been my paranoia, and the 3D is why I'm still alive to this day. It's part of spycraft. Okay, so literally we are aware and have been that their way of life is ending. Okay, and we haven't told you guys that because people freak out. It's the end of the world. Well, what has happened is people are spiritually starting to become aware of that, and they're all freaking out. Oh no, the rapture, we're all going to die. It's the end of the world. And so now that everybody is spiritually getting to seeing that and getting afraid, we're now going, okay, it's not what you think. It's not the doom and gloom death of everyone on the planet, the way everyone tries to sell you for the last couple thousand years on the earth. That's the corruption of what's actually happening that they've been trying to sell you, right? Celeste says the internet is a crazy place for people watchers. Yes, it is. Everyone gives you so much to watch. They do. But that's the point of it. A lot of it is the misinformation and distraction, to keep you from actually finding or doing what you should be, right? And that's literally the inundation of doubt is in everything. You can't look anything up on the internet. The sky is blue. Is it really? And there's going to be a whole discussion for on hours and hours. And that is exactly what Tucker Carlson was referring to when he literally, in his 2-minute speech, when he said being off for a few days and then looking at this silly debates and conversations that we have that don't actually mean anything at all. He was speaking in some codes there, we're hoping, because he was saying things in a way that was being esoteric but also direct. So it was very ambiguous. And that's why Russell Brand said what he said about him. That's why I've said what I've said about him. That's why Dan Bongino said what he said about him, and other people that have talked about what Tucker Carlson said, because he said a great deal in 2 minutes and 23 seconds. A great deal more than the direct words that he said in 2 minutes and 23 seconds. And that's why that's why he's been listened to so much around the world, because other people are actually reading between the lines of what he was saying. And we're hoping that that's going to continue, and that it's not just him saying that to get a job, and that if he does get a job, it's at the right place and he has the right words and be able to speak to the world and continue being the abolitionist and being the not even the independent, but what's the word I'm looking for in that political party, that is a libertarian. But he's not. I don't think he's actually listed as a libertarian. I think he's listed as no party affiliation, but he's more libertarian minded. But when you go to look up the actual, what does the Libertarian Party in the United States stand for? I don't agree with that either. It's bullshit. But I would be considered more of a libertarian because I believe in liberty. And what does that word mean? Liberty is a French word that literally means freedom of everything, freedom of politics, freedom of religion, freedom of choice, freedom of everything. Liberty, look up that word, liberty, look up that word. And so there was a guy here in America that was famous for saying, give me liberty or give me death. And to the French, that was the most important word in their dictionary, and kind of still is. Liberté. Look it up. Look up that word and see what it means in the English and French dictionary, and see what that word means. And then you'll understand that concept. So the rhetoric has changed because the awareness has changed, and because of certain things happening on the planet, I can now then tell you things that I couldn't tell you a month ago. I can now inform you as to some things that I couldn't inform you to a month ago. And Peter and Cassie, who are currently in this audience, would be able to talk about that. And you'll learn more about those of us who are in certain areas of this ambassadorship that you saw most of us on Earth Day. Talking on Earth Day, that we introduced ourselves, but didn't introduce ourselves individually as ambassadors from a couple of different coalitions, as a matter of fact, that were here. You'll hear more about that as we go, and you'll hear more people around the world doing the same thing. And as the picture gets larger and larger, you'll start to then realize on-world, off-world coalitions, and who's actually part of what. It's going to become a lot more clear, but it's also going to be a lot more dissension, like Celeste was saying, about the internet being distracting, and the messages that you're getting are going to be distracting. And those of us that are here now are trying to teach you what to look for to be able to vet for yourself, because there's going to be a lot of doubt that's going to be cast on me, on the ambassadors that work with me, on the teams that work with those ambassadors, the other ambassadors that work around the world. And you're going to hear a lot of people trying to discredit a lot of things that we're saying. And I say to you, don't believe what they say. Don't believe what I say. Jennifer Olson, welcome. Jennifer Olson Watson, I see you. Welcome. She didn't say anything in any of the chats, but she popped in. So welcome if you're still here. So you're going to have rolling out in the future more. I'm going to be giving you more of the Law of One, more of Ra, in a capacity that's going to be a lot larger than what Dawn was able to discern between 1981 and 1984, because exponentially we are farther, about 100 years more spiritually advanced, possibly 150 years more spiritually advanced than not Ra, but then Dawn was in 1984, 1981 to 1984, or 1981 to 1983. As a human being race on the planet, we've made a great deal, exponential leaps and bounds. So that unlocks knowledge that I can give you now that I couldn't then. And literally, there's been a change in the last month, like I said, worldwide. And you see that if you're watching any independent, any kind of influencer anywhere on the planet, you've seen that in the last literal 30 days from today ago, you see a major change in what is being said to you about what is happening on this earth that you don't see. If you go back further, you see hints now that you know what we're saying. You see hints that we were saying it. Okay. And now we're outright saying it. And things are going to change as we go forward, more and more. It's going to get crazier with information on the internet, on the national news agencies, and these governments around the world are going to try and solidify and centralize even more and more control over the internet and over what you, and to the point of countries doing what the Chinese communists have done and literally cordoning off you from the outside world. I know that some of what's going on in Australia has gotten that way, and some of what's gone on in Canada has gotten that way. Literally, a simple movie like The Giver can't be watched in Canada currently. Okay. Certain movies have already been banned that you're unaware of, that your country has banned. That's happened in this country too. Okay. But a lot of these movies that I'm telling you about, you can still watch in America, but try and figure that out over in your country, unless you have access to the American portals, like on YouTube or on, Facebook or on some of these places, even though it is under their control. But the different countries, the UK, somebody said that earlier. I think it was Rick that said that earlier. The UK is a completely different, a type of control. Ireland is having issues. You guys are having that going on. I know Pamela's in the north, Peter's in the south. So I hear what's going on in Ireland, those two regions, and the control of the government and what you guys are going through there. You're going through issues just like we are in America, just like Canada is, just like Australia is, like all the other governments, Germany and France and Spain and everybody and Italy. They're literally have infiltrated everything, but they know, even those governments that are trying, they're still, you have now everyone in that religion is trying to keep their way of life alive, because they're afraid that everything's going to collapse. And if it all collapses, they've erased you guys' ability to take care of yourselves without them. And so now they're scared to death because they need you. So they need you to still stay convinced that you need them. So therefore they have to make all the rest of us outliers, and they have to literally try and convince you that we're just crazy, and that we're trying to usurp their control in some way. When the truth is, that's exactly what we're doing, but we're not doing it because we want control of the system. There are some people that are going to try and do that because they want to be in control, because evil people, everyone that's evil wants to ultimately be in control. Every individual that's evil secretly wants to be the king of the earth and the king of the universe. They may not say it out loud, but if you get them to tell the truth, every single person who is a narcissist is evil will say, yeah, truthfully, if I could do it, I would take over the world. But it is, yeah, Denise said, it's going to get better. No, it is. It is already better. And this is what I try to tell people. When you get to that fear place and you start freaking out and you're like, oh my God, we're losing everything and the control and all of that, I want you to realize, and I tell people, see, they don't want you to know history because they don't want you to know how bad it was. That's one of the reasons they don't want you to know history, not just because history repeats itself, but they don't want you to know how bad it was and how far you've come, because they want you to believe that things are worse now and that you need them. This is what I'm alluding to. And the truth is, if you actually look at history, you'll find out that 50 years ago, 70 years ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, 200, no matter how far back you look, you're going to find that it was actually far, 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 far worse before than it is now. It's just because you're in the now and they're selling you 100% fear 24 hours a day on every station, on every talk show, on every chat channel, on every place on the internet. It seems because you're bombarded with fear 24 hours a day in a way that you weren't 100 years ago, 50 years ago, even 25 years ago. So because of that, the fear seems to be huge and that evil seems to be huge. And in truth, evil is less than 0.1% of spirituality right now. And evil is only 10% of the population of the earth. But they'll have you believe that they're in complete control and that they have the dominant power. That's why if you look at the modern era, we show you this with, even in Star Wars, they tried to have you believe that the resistance was 5 people and then it was only 100 people and that the empire was galactic and they had 1 billion soldiers and a billion ships and there was no way they could ever win. And the evil guy in charge told you that, right? And then in the very end, what happened? Billions of humans showed up in ships and the military shit themselves. Where did they get this Navy? They're just people. They're just people, sir. But there's so many of them that they're attacking us and they're all armed of themselves. That was the resistance. That was the overthrow. That was the literal revolution. And that's what's happened every single time in history when they've tried to lock down control. So they don't want you knowing that, because to know that is to know what's happening now, that you're winning, they're losing. So if you were able to see history, you would see the cyclical nature of history and how the Roman Empire fell and how the Greek and why, and how the Greek Empire fell and how the Essenes fell and how the Merovingian kings fell, and why and when, how the English throne fell, where and why and when and how the Egyptian empire fell, how, where and why. To know that would be to see what's happening now and the progression of it and realize it's actually way fucking better than it was 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 25 years ago. They don't want you to realize that. So they try to take all of that knowledge away from you so you can't make the reference. And I'm one of those people that's telling you that, so they're going to have to try and stifle me, and they've been trying to stifle me. I'm not the only one. There's millions of us worldwide that are telling you this stuff. Okay? And I'm not being paid to do this. The Trojan horse, right, Peter? Right? And that's what we have become. That's where literally, thank you for bringing that concept up, because that literally is what we had to become. So look up Troy, look up the Trojan horse, and that's literally what we have done on this earth this time around, which is exactly what the Greeks did 4,000 years ago now, 3,500 years ago at Troy, which they eradicated to the point of a fable. For that reason, by the way, in history, they eradicated the story and usurped the idea and told you Troy never existed and that whole story was just fabricated. And what were they trying to hide by doing that? Same thing with Leonidas and the 300. They wanted you to believe that whole thing was just made up too. Why? Because 300 men stood up against 1 million man army. 300 people stood against 1 million people and defeated them. They all died, but there was other people that fought with them. There was another 300 soldiers that were Arcadians who survived that battle, and a few of the hoplites survived that battle, and that united all of Greece, and Greece conquered the known world from the Battle of Thermopylae happening. They didn't want you to know about that. They wanted that information to be kept from you, because a few good men, to coin a military term in the Americas, a few good men stood. That's the same story of King Arthur. They want you to believe that King Arthur was a fable. Why? Because Arturius, a half Roman, half Woad, with his Salmatian knights from Sumeria, a couple of them were Mongols. Lancelot was actually a Mongol. He was part Asian. He was a Mongolian. A lot of you don't know that. They called him Lancelot because they couldn't pronounce his name, because his name was an Asian name and they couldn't say like Hop Sing. Flim Dom. They couldn't say it. What is that? They called him Lancelot because all the women loved him because he was not English and he had an accent. And so they all wanted to screw him, and he screwed everybody. It wasn't called Lancelot because he used his lance and on horseback and fought all the time. He was called Lancelot because he used his lance, his penis. Not joking. Okay. That's the names of people in history when they actually looked them up change. Ask Peter. He was an actor on the set of History Channel's Vikings. Ragnar Northbrook. That name literally means soggy pants, soggy bottom, right? And they looked into. They also looked into one of his sons, Ivar the Terrible, or Ivar the Boneless. And they said, well, it was because Ivar was carried around on his shield because he had his disease where his bones were soft and he couldn't walk. And that's why. And somebody said, that's not true. So the History Channel looked into it and did a documentary on it and had to admit, oops, we found out that the reason why they called him Ivar the Boneless was because he couldn't get an erection and he couldn't get laid. So they called him Ivar the Boneless, and he was mean, nasty, cantankerous, and evil because everyone knew he couldn't get a hard on and he couldn't have sex. And that pissed him off, and he hated everybody for it, and he was evil and vindictive to the world because he couldn't actually have children and have sex. But they tell you, and in the movie, the guy played that he was quadriplegic, and they told you that's what it was in the beginning, and then almost at the end of them filming it, they went, oops. We found out that's not the truth of why they called him Ivar the Boneless. But it was actually because of that. And then people were saying, why was it Ragnar? What did that mean? And they looked that up and they said he made his own pants and they didn't fit him right. And he had a soggy butt. It looked like he had a load of shit in his pants, or that he had, soiled himself. So they called him Ragnar Soggy Bottom. Not a joke. And that translates to Ragnar Northbrook. Everyone thinks that means North Brook, like some river in the north. But it's not what his name means. His name means Soggy Bottoms because look that up in history. It's true, right? And then, other names we don't know with him. Bjorn Ironside. It means bear. Bjorn is bear. It's actually modern Swedish. Bjorn means bear, right? Bjorn Ironside. Ironside doesn't mean side of iron of what those English words mean today. You should look that up too, okay? Ironside means something different in Swedish than it does in English. That's lost in translation. I know enough of those languages to know that. What we say force, may the force be with you, isn't what the word force means in German or French. It's not what force, like I force you to do something. Force means strength, literally. So there's different terms for the same words in different languages, and we in English use all of those. Okay, I'm going to go because now it's almost 6 o'clock. I have to cook dinner and watch the playoffs in basketball. And hopefully my Warriors win tonight and move on to the next portion of the playoffs. If not, they have to play again in 2 days. But they're in San Francisco at home, and they're playing against the Sacramento Kings. And I live 5 miles from where the Sacramento Kings play. I'm not a Kings fan, but some of my family is. My brother is a Warriors fan like me because we grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. His wife is a Kings fan, and they live right up the street from me. They live about a half a mile away from where I'm at. So they're split when they're watching it in their house. Over here, we're Warrior fans. So go, as we would say, Dub Nation, because Warrior Nation, Dub Nation. They won the championship last year, and I'm hoping they win it again. I know the dynasty is getting old. And will probably, if they win it this year, hopefully they do, and they probably won't come back and win it for a few more years. The Sacramento Kings, who now have the assistant coach from the Warriors as their head coach, who is literally the head coach of the year in the NBA, is going to take the Sacramento Kings to a championship in the next couple of years. And he might do it. And if they beat the Warriors, I'll be voting for them the rest of the way through. If they win it and beat the Warriors, I will then be rooting for the Kings because they are local. All right, guys, I love you guys. For those of you that I pissed off by you thinking I was talking politics and taking a side, get over your religion, realize that is a religion, and that I wasn't doing any of that. And I was trying to inform you as to really what's going on. Thank you, Kevin. I see you there, brother. And Kevin, I'm surprised he didn't say anything. See, now I know that if Kevin was here the whole time, he didn't make a lot of comments about politics because he realized that I wasn't taking a side because he won't let me. I love you for Kevin for that. If I look like I'm taking a political side, Kevin will take the opposing side and shove it back in my face every time. So the fact that Kevin Cummings is in the audience right now and hasn't taken offense to anything that I've referred to in the political arena says that I was on point and he approves. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, brother, for your approval. I didn't know you were still here until you literally just said thank you. So the fact that he was here and didn't get pissed off and go, come on, Leo, and tell me the opposing point of view, he realized that I was staying in the center and I wasn't trying to sound like I was coming from any point of view in that religion, because I'm not part of that religion at all. All right, guys. So have a great weekend. I will see you guys tomorrow. Don't forget, I'm going to put it up on the screen one more time before I go. If you're interested, tomorrow literally is tomorrow morning here in California, 11 a.m. California time, GMC -7, wherever you are in the world. You should be able to tell time by that. Or 7 p.m. in the UK. Should be able to tell time by that, wherever you are on the planet. We will literally on Ancient Aliens Worldwide, but it's an exclusive video, but I will be broadcasting on Orion Rising, where I'm live now, and on Ancient Aliens Worldwide. We will be live and sharing it out to the world, so you won't have to be in the group this time to actually do that. We made that mistake last time, and with the Orion Coalition of Light, and you had to join the group, and we had to have admins sitting in there and letting you in. And some people left because they had to wait to get in. So this time we're going to go live and let you guys share it. So you can find it on Orion Rising. It'll be Mandy Wilson will be doing the interview. I will be producing it on the group for the group Ancient Aliens Worldwide that I created back in 2012. And Andrew Collins will be there. He'll be talking about his new book, which is about to release. If it hasn't yet, I think the release date is today or tomorrow, very soon. I haven't checked into that. I should have asked her when I talked to her today what the release date was. This is his new book. It may or may not be out for you to be able to pick up right now. If it is, you can go everywhere online and find it. The First Female Pharaoh. And Andrew Collins will be live tomorrow on Ancient Aliens Worldwide and Orion Rising to talk about that. And I don't know how long the interview is going to go. It's going to be badass. He has been very gracious, and he's giving us the exclusive. He has not interviewed for this book with anyone yet, and he's not done it live yet. So check it out, guys. Tomorrow, tune in. I'll be promoting it all night, and tomorrow trying to keep myself out of Facebook jail. And it'll also be on YouTube. We'll have it live on YouTube on my channel to share out on YouTube as well. Come in. It's going to be great. He's going to be talking about, I can't even say her name properly, so I'm not going to slaughter it by trying to say her name. It's there on the screen for you to see if you're listening on the MP4 file. If you're listening on MP3, go to either Orion Rising, wherever you're listening to me now. It will be on there, but it won't be live. It'll be there after the show's live. I will then put it on MP3 for the world so that you guys, if you're hearing this now and you go, oh crap, I won't be able to hear it live, you will be able to hear you just won't be able to hear it live and ask questions. If you want to ask him questions, you need to be in the chat on Orion Rising or in the chat on the link in Ancient Aliens Worldwide, and those will filter into the chat that we will be feeding him. So if we take questions, when we take questions, those questions will be by those people who are live, or a link somewhere on YouTube or on Facebook that comes from Orion Rising to you, and it gets shared there. You can go into there and talk, and we will be able to then. So we're going to limit. It's not going to be going live in 3 different places like now where I have to keep monitors up. I'm going to go live on Orion Rising and on YouTube, and then we're going to share it out to the world from there. And then I will share it out to the world in MP3 file on wherever you listen to the podcast, wherever you're hearing my voice around the world right now. You guys will be able to hear it, but it won't be live, but you'll be able to hear it tomorrow after the show. All right, guys, I love you guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Some of you I won't. And if I don't, then I'll see you guys next week for the Law of One. Have a great evening and have a great weekend.